Chapter 41-47. During this period of time, Lin Yi's heart had been moved many times, and Tianshan and Sydney had long since prepared to marry him. But at the last moment, Lin Yi would always stop in time. It wasn't that he had any psychological barriers, and it wasn't because he had any problems in that area that he couldn't talk about. The reason why he was able to control himself was because of that one time when he was drunk. The ghost suddenly appeared and said something. The creation battle art is a traditional morality heart technique. At least before the mysterious ascension stage, you must not touch women. Otherwise, it will cause the flow of true qi in your meridians to reverse. Every time you do it, it will accelerate the flow of true qi in your meridians. When you do it too many times, you will definitely die from the reverse flow of true qi in your meridians. It's that scary? Lin Yi was shocked. Think about it. If you cultivate the mental cultivation method backwards, what will happen to you? I'm not trying to scare you. There's a precedent of this on Sky Class Island before. The ghost laughed. All right. Only then did Lin Yi suppress the fire in his heart. He thought that the art of dragon mastery was a universal practitioner's art, and this heaven's fortune battle art that he'd modified. He probably wouldn't die even if he practiced it backwards, right? Of course, this was just a thought. Lin Yi wasn't that bored to the point where he'd go against the flow. After all, this wasn't a joke. If he guessed wrongly, the consequences would be that he'd go mad, or he'd die on the spot. It was because of this episode that Lin Yi was able to control himself and didn't eat the two girls, leaving it for the future. Other than Tianshan and Sydney, Lin Yi had another unfulfilled wish, and that was the cheap master that he had never met, the pill god Zhang Liju. Lin Yi thought that he would be able to meet Zhang Liju sooner or later, but he didn't expect that this cheap master of his never showed up at all. He didn't even know where Zhang Liju went, let alone meet him. In this period of time, Lin Yi had asked Hou Guanqi and Kai Zhongyang, his two disciples, to try and contact Zhang Liju, but there was no reply. Left without a choice, Lin Yi could only start preparing to return to the North Island. As for meeting Zhang Liju, that would have to wait for another day. While preparing to deal with the aftermath before leaving, Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Recalling the original intention of this trip, he suddenly felt a sense of impermanence. Originally, he was just going to Hutsai Mountain to look for the life mushroom, but he didn't expect to be injured by the Golden Core Middle Phase Master, and then brought to Middle Island by Situ Qian. After that, a series of unexpected events happened. The saying that fate played tricks on people was indeed true. Thinking about Situ Qian, Lin Yi couldn't help but hesitate. This woman was the source of Sydney's misery for half a year. Just like Wei Shenjin, he had long since made up his mind to get rid of her. However, now that he had crippled Wei Shenjin, this woman was the only one left. She was no longer a threat to Sydney. After all, she had the protection of the great god, the will of heaven. Even if Sydney's identity was exposed, he believed that the Snow Sword faction wouldn't dare do anything to Sydney. However, leaving this woman alive was still a hidden danger. Lin Yi was now wondering if he could get rid of this danger completely before he left. Although there was a lot of risk in killing Situ Qian, it was the same as dealing with Wei Shenjin. He could use Wu Fu Ling Yi's identity as a scapegoat. This way, it wouldn't affect Tiandan Pavilion. Of course, no matter what, the Snow Sword faction was one of the few big factions on Middle Island. Even if Lin Yi was an early-stage Gold Core expert, and even had the terrifying potential to become the strongest Gold Core expert, it was still too arrogant for him to kill Situ Qian. Especially during this period of time, the Snow Sword faction was still searching for Wu Fu Ling Yi. If he wanted to make a move, he would have to find an excellent opportunity. While Lin Yi was assessing the risk, the whereabouts of Situ Qian, who was his target, became more and more strange in the past few days. It even aroused the suspicion of Wei Shenjin. Before this, Situ Qian and her maid, little Qiuhua, would often stay in the room to accompany him. However, in the past few days, the master and maid stayed in the room less and less. They never said anything when they went out. However, every time they came back, Wei Shenjin would find that the two of them had a rosy complexion and were in high spirits. They were like fresh flowers that had been moisturized. As for their sexual affairs, they never mentioned it again after the last time. This made Wei Shenjin very surprised. Whether it was Situ Qian or little Qiuhua, They were both women with extremely strong sexual needs. A few days ago, they had been complaining about this matter, but now, they simply did not mention it at all. No matter how he thought about it, he felt that there must be something fishy about it. Wei Shenjin could not help but ask about their whereabouts several times. However, the answer he got from Situ Qian was that they had gone to cultivate. This answer was something that Wei Shenjin did not believe at all. According to Situ Qian's usual temperament, it was already the sun rising from the west if she occasionally took the initiative to cultivate. It was simply impossible for her to cultivate for several days in a row. However, Situ Qian did not want to talk about it. It was futile for Wei Shenjin to ask any more questions. He could only continue to suppress his doubts in the bottom of his heart. On this day, just like the previous few days, Situ Qian and her maid little Qiuhua went out early, leaving Wei Shenjin to rest alone in his room. It was not until late at night that the sound of their footsteps could be heard from outside the door. "Miss, Senior Brother Ma is really brave today. The Central Chamber of Commerce's medicine is really overbearing. He has been serving us sisters for several hours in a row, but he is still so brave. Hee hee." This was the voice of the maid little Qiuhua. Her voice was obviously a bit louder than usual. Moreover, she sounded a bit drunk. It seemed like she had drunk a lot of alcohol. Yes, today was really too exciting. That way Shenjin is getting worse and worse. He shouldn't have killed all those male pets. It's such a pity to keep a few of them alive. Now, we can only look for Senior Brother Ma to satisfy our cravings. Situ Qian said with a drunken smile. That's true. Senior Brother Ma is really brave, and we are also very satisfied with him. However, his appearance is too ordinary. It's a bit disgusting to look at him from the front. He is not as pleasing to the eyes as those male pets of ours. Little Qiuhua also said regretfully. Hearing the words that came from outside the door, Wei Shenjin was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of his eye sockets. He was so angry that he could not wait to take out his sword and cut this B*th in half. He had long suspected that there was something going on between the two women. Previously, he thought that the two women were just comforting each other. Although it was a bit embarrassing, his body was weak, so he could only turn a blind eye to it. However, he did not expect that the two women had actually gone to find a wild man and made him wear a big green hat. R1152. Chapter 41-48. Especially when this person was Senior Brother Ma. One had to know that this person had once been disfigured and was one of the ugliest people in the entire Snow Sword faction. Yet, these two women had actually gone to look for him. They were King Shameless. What made Wei Shenjin even more angry and surprised was that these two women actually had a male pet in the past. Wasn't it their first time? And they had indeed witnessed their wedding night. How could they have a male pet? For any healthy man, the most intolerable thing was that his woman had cheated on him. He could wear any hat, but he could not be cuckolded. Suddenly hearing the truth from the two women, Wei Shenjin felt like he had been struck by a bolt from the blue. He could not care less about his weak and unhealed body. His first reaction was to raise his sword and kill them. However, as soon as he reached the door, he heard the approaching footsteps of the two women and their shameless laughter. He felt the ice-cold sensation from the snow sword in his hand. Wei Shenjin, who had flown into a rage out of humiliation, suddenly became a little more clear-headed. He was now a powerless cripple, not a highly regarded core disciple. Not to mention the fact that he could not defeat Situ Qian. Just the fact that Situ Qian was the granddaughter of an elder was enough to suppress him to the point that he did not dare to move. If he could, he would definitely rush out and hack these two women to death. However, all of this was just wishful thinking. He had to force himself to calm down and not make a move for the time being. Although the words he had heard just now were enough to let him know the truth, it could not be considered as irrefutable evidence. With his current situation, if he wanted to clean up the Snow Sword faction, he had to first obtain irrefutable evidence. At the very least, he had to make Situ Qian, the bitch, unable to defend herself. Wei Shenjin suppressed his anger and immediately turned back to the bed, pretending to be asleep. When Situ Qian and little Qiuhua opened the door reeking of alcohol, he pretended to have just woken up. "Junior sister, you are back." You must be tired from today's training. Come, sit down and rest for a while. Senior brother will get you some hot water to take a bath. Wei Shinjin suppressed the disgust in his heart and forced a smile. Situ Qian and little Qiuhua couldn't help but look at each other in surprise. Fetching water was usually done by the servants. Even if Wei Shinjin bathed himself, he would never fetch water himself. Even after he was injured and became a cripple, this had never changed. Today was the first time Wei Shinjin did something like this. All right then, don't be too hot. I like warm water. Situ Qian nodded. She had thought that Wei Shinjin had finally come to terms with reality. His attitude had changed from a superior core disciple to a useless person. A cripple with no strength and no status. What else could he do other than serving others? Looking at Wei Shinjin busily fetching water for her, Situ Qian could not help but raise her eyebrows. Recently, she had been in cahoots with senior brother Ma. Wei Shinjin, her useless husband, had become an absolute burden in her eyes. Not only was he useless, but he was also a hindrance. She had even begun to ponder about it. Do I need to do something? I might as well just kill Wei Shinjin. Anyway, the sect had already given up on him. She could just find an excuse of a relapse of his injury, and no one would come to investigate. At that time, she would no longer have to worry about this trash and would be able to fool around with senior brother Ma. However, seeing that Wei Shinjin was so sensible, Situ Qian's killing intent disappeared a little. The killing intent in Situ Qian's heart dissipated a little. If this guy could see the truth and change his attitude, it would not be impossible for her to keep him. After all, she could just order him around as a servant and it would not be a problem. After a while, Wei Shinjin had fetched the water and deliberately adjusted the temperature to Situ Qian's favorite temperature. Not only that, he even lowered his status and personally helped Situ Qian bathe, massaging her shoulders and scrubbing her back. Situ Qian was overjoyed. Not bad. You did well today. I will reward you tonight. Situ Qian nodded with satisfaction. She had the attitude of a superior queen. It seemed that letting Wei Shinjin sleep with her once was already a great grace. Good. Although Wei Shinjin felt as disgusted as if he had swallowed a fly, he still pretended to be overjoyed. Before he obtained conclusive evidence, he could not let this bitch have the slightest doubt. This time, because Wei Shinjin's heart was filled with disgust, he did not feel happy at all. However, this caused the time to be significantly longer than before, which greatly surprised Situ Qian. Even her maid, little Qiuhua, was able to benefit from it. During the day, they fooled around with senior brother Ma, and at night, when they came back, Wei Shinjin worked so hard. Situ Qian and little Qiuhua felt like they had returned to the past. But at that time, they had kept several male pets, which was why they were so satisfied. Not bad. Wei Shinjin, this cripple, still had some use. He could do the work of a servant, and he could also be ordered around as a male pet. It was good to keep him like this. Feeling satisfied, Situ Qian showed a rare act of kindness and fell into a deep sleep with little Qiuhua, their clothes disheveled and their limbs tangled together. Listening to the breathing of the two women gradually become stable, and after confirming that they were completely asleep, Wei Shinjin cursed the two bitches in his heart. He then gritted his teeth and tiptoed out of the bed. Pulling open the screen, Wei Shinjin walked into a compartment next to it. This was the room that Situ Qian used to freshen up and put on makeup. It was also her most private place. If it was before, Wei Shinjin would not even bother to look at it, let alone deliberately walk in. But now, he had to look carefully. Maybe there was something hidden in it. At a glance, the dressing table and the cabinet were filled with women's rouge and face powder. At first glance, there was nothing special about it. However, the paper could not cover the fire. Wei Shinjin only casually flipped through it a few times, and what he saw next completely shocked him. As far as the eye could see, it was filled with filthy things. There were enough of them to fill a large box, and all of them were filthy things used to increase sexual pleasure. If it was before he was injured, Situ Qian would still be careful. These things would definitely be well hidden, and he would not be able to find them so easily. But these days, Situ Qian had obviously begun to not put him, her real husband, in her eyes. Naturally, She was not so vigilant in this aspect. Looking at the things in front of him, Wei Shenjin suddenly clenched his teeth in anger. His body trembled, and he could not help but curse, "Bitch." He really did not expect that Situ Qian, the granddaughter of a dignified elder of the Snow Sword faction, would be such a shameless thing. Looking at the logo, Wei Shenjin could not help but be stunned. They were all the logos of the Central Chamber of Commerce. In addition to the pile of props, there were also mini drugs for men and women. Floating astronomy. Chapter 41-49. Wei Shenjin was so angry that his head was buzzing. However, before he could explode, an exquisite box caught his attention. Artificial membrane? Wei Shenjin did not understand. He read the description carefully and finally understood. Blood rushed to his head, and he almost fainted on the spot. The 2 artificial membranes had already been used. All that was left were the 2 outer wrappers. He finally understood everything. Bitch, bitch, bitch. If I don't kill you, I, Wei Shenjin, am not a human. Wei Shenjin's eyes were spitting fire. He turned around and walked towards the 2 women who were sleeping soundly on the bed with his snow sword in hand. He had completely lost all sense of reason. In any case, he was already a cripple with no hope of recovery. If he continued to wear this big green hat, then what was the point of him living? In Wei Shenjin's mind, all the hatred he had for Ling Yi had been transferred to Situ Qian and her servant. From what he could see, what happened between Sydney and Ling Yi was a trap set up by Situ Qian. She had purposely framed Sydney and Ling Yi so that he would take the bait and marry her. This woman was too cunning. That was the truth. Wei Shenjin was not stupid. Now that he thought about it, there was something fishy about what had happened. Now, he had finally found the real answer. Situ Qian, you must die today. Carrying his snow sword, Wei Shenjin walked to the bed. His face was filled with murderous intent. He knew that if he were to kill her tonight, he would not be able to escape death. However, he could not care less. Even if he were to die, he would make these 2 bitches his scapegoats and cut them into 1,000 pieces. However, just as Wei Shenjin was about to kill her, Situ Qian, who was lying on the bed in a disheveled state, seemed to have sensed something. She turned around in a daze. What are you doing up in the middle of the night? Situ Qian opened her sleepy eyes and mumbled to Wei Shenjin, who was standing in front of the bed. Wei Shenjin was startled. Only then did he remember that his opponent was not a cripple like him, but a Consummation Foundation establishment expert. His perception was very sharp. Furthermore, his snow sword was forged from 1,000-year-old frost iron. Even if he did not use the Snow Sword School's core martial techniques and just drew the sword from the scabbard, he would not be able to sense anything. That would also cause the surrounding temperature to plummet, which was why Situ Qian had woken up. Fortunately, Situ Qian had drunk too much and had been fooling around for days and nights. Although she was subconsciously awakened by the cold air, she was not fully awake yet. She could only mutter in a daze. Even if Wei Shenjin wanted to perish together with Situ Qian, Wei Shenjin knew that he could not kill her now that she had woken up. He could only temporarily find an excuse to fool them and wait for the next opportunity. Oh, it's nothing. Wei Shenjin hurriedly put Snow Sword to the side without batting an eyelid, pretending to be impatient. He swallowed his saliva and said to Situ Qian, "Qian, you're too beautiful. So I wanted to. Want to do it again? I don't think I gave you any medicine. Why are you so fierce today? You've improved a lot. Come on, come on. I'll make an exception and reward you again." Situ Qian's attention was indeed diverted. She immediately twisted her body and urged Wei Shenjin to hurry up. She had always been open to such things. Wei Shenjin was relieved and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He hurriedly rushed up, but his eyes were cold and gloomy. In the Cultivators' College, Nantian Aurora, Si Haishao, and Ancestor Xinshin gathered together to discuss how to deal with Lin Yi. Although they had already made up their minds to take action on Lin Yi's way back to the North Island, it was the best opportunity for them. However, there was still a lot of risk. With their strength, killing Lin Yi would not be a problem. The real problem was what would happen next. What they had to worry about was whether Lin Yi's death would anger the will of Heaven and Shanghai Tianhua in the North Island. One of them was in the Middle Island, and the other was in the North Island. Once the news got out, it would be easy for anyone to kill them, unless they hid in the Central Chamber of Commerce and never came out to do business. In that case, the mysterious man could save their lives. Killing Lin Yi isn't difficult at all. The difficult part is how to ensure that we don't get involved and leave no clues. That's the key. Si Haishao pinched his chin and frowned. Indeed, that old thing Tianqing is too ferocious. If he were to find out that we killed Lin Yi, with his lawless nature as a madman, he might just kill everyone in the Cultivator Academy. With that explosive power of his, apart from the dean, no one would be able to stop him. Nantian Aurora nodded with lingering fear. If we all cover our faces and are a little more careful, there shouldn't be any clues left, right? Even if he's powerful, he's not a god. He can't be omniscient and omnipotent, right? Ancestor Xinshin could not help but say. In his opinion, Nantian Aurora and Si Haishao were a little too careful in this matter. The higher one's status was, the more timid they were. As long as they masked their faces and made a move, how would the will of heaven know that they were the ones who did it? The will of heaven is indeed not a god, and he's not omniscient and omnipotent, but with his level and ability, it's a piece of cake for him to find out anything. Xinshin, have you forgotten the identity of the will of heaven? Nantian Aurora glanced at him and said, Identity? Ancestor Xinshin was stunned. He had never heard anyone mention it before. That's right. Don't forget that the will of heaven is the Deputy Island Master of Middle Island. He only needs to let the Middle Island Law Enforcement Hall take action, and it'll be very easy to get to the bottom of this. After all, we're not experts in this area. We mustn't let our guard down. Nantian Aurora echoed with a bitter smile. In that case, as long as we make a move, won't he find out? Ancestor Xinshin said helplessly. That seems to be the case. If we want to kill Lin Yi without taking any risks, it seems unlikely. Nantian Aurora and Si Haishao both sighed. If they could afford to offend the will of heaven, they would have directly made a move against the will of heaven. Why would they still turn their attention to Lin Yi? But as they discussed, they suddenly realized that it was becoming more and more difficult to deal with a mere Lin Yi. How could they endure this? However, if they were asked to stop just like that, they would definitely not be willing. After all, they were also important figures with status. If they didn't even dare to kill a mere Lin Yi, then what were they supposed to do? Floating astronomy. Chapter 4150. Just as Nantian Aurora and Si Haishao were about to make up their minds to kill Lin Yi, even at the risk of the will of heaven's revenge, Patriarch Xinshin suddenly made a suggestion, causing their eyes to light up. What if we don't do it ourselves, but use someone else to kill Lin Yi? Patriarch Xinshin asked. He was an extremely malicious person. If he wanted to play dirty, he would be able to compete with Kong Ming. Otherwise, they wouldn't have become master and disciple. Use someone else to kill? That's a good idea. Nantian Aurora's eyes immediately lit up. He turned to Si Haishao and said, Shopkeeper Si, didn't you say you're in charge of the intelligence system? See if there's anyone we can make use of. I'm only in charge of the North Island's intelligence system. I haven't interfered with Middle Island's side yet. I've only roughly seen some information. Si Haishao smiled and then said, But speaking of making use of someone, other than the will of heaven, the biggest news in Middle Island recently is that Snow Sword Faction's core disciple being beaten into a cripple. Snow Sword Faction is in a hurry to take revenge. Can we think of a way to pin the blame on Lin Yi? Oh, what's going on? Quickly tell us, Nantian Aurora hurriedly asked. Previously, he was only concerned about fighting for the position of Middle Island's Vice Island Lord and didn't have the time to care about gossip. As for Patriarch Xinshin, he happened to be in seclusion a while ago. He only came out on the day Nantian Aurora took over. After that, a series of events happened, so he didn't have the chance to listen to the news. Snow Sword Faction's core disciple, Wei Shinjin, had his meridians shattered by someone and became a cripple. The person who injured him was a martial artist called Ling Yi. No one knows where this person came from. Before that, he had already caused a commotion. It was said that this martial artist Ling Yi had an affair with the Snow Sword Faction's maidservant, Sydney, and had eloped. The entire city was in an uproar. Because of this, the Snow Sword faction has already put him on the wanted list twice. Now, he has already become a moderately famous person in Middle Island. Si Haishao explained to the two. I see. Only then did Nantion Aurora nod. However, he immediately frowned and said, but what does this have to do with Lin Yi? The Snow Sword faction is looking for Wufu Ling Yi. We can't just push this matter onto Lin Yi just because the name sounds similar. The Snow Sword faction is not stupid. How can they be used so easily? That's true, but apart from this, there doesn't seem to be anything else that can be used. Si Haishao was halfway through his sentence when the Black Earth Patriarch suddenly slapped his thigh. His eyes lit up as he shouted, OF*CK. This is a heavenly opportunity. Oh, what do you mean? Southern Polar Light and Si Haishao were both stunned. The martial artist that Manager C mentioned earlier is called Ling Yi, right? Do you know what happened to Lin Yi when he was in the secular world? What's your favorite alias? Patriarch Xianqian asked excitedly. Could it be Ling Yi? Si Haishao was shocked when he heard that. He suddenly remembered that Lin Yi had a precedent of hiding his identity in the North Island. However, at that time, his alias was Lin Air. Now that he was in the Middle Island, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't use the same trick again. That's right, it's Ling Yi. Patriarch Xianqian nodded heavily. There's such a thing? Southern Polar Light's eyes lit up, but then he said, but how can we prove that Lin Yi is Ling Yi? Even if he used this alias in the secular world before, we can say that it was just a coincidence. Just based on this point, if we want to convince the Snow Sword faction to be our fighter, that's not enough. Hee. Actually, there's no need to prove it. If it were someone else, there might really be a possibility of having the same name. However, I know that Sydney. She's Lin Yi's mistress in the secular world. Patriarch Xianqian said with certainty, Dean Nantion. Did you forget that when the heavenly stage island opened in the secular world, in the harem of Lin Yi's women, Sydney was included? Huh, that's right. Only then did Southern Polar Light come to a sudden realization. With his status, he wouldn't pay attention to such a small matter. However, with Patriarch Xianqian's reminder, he remembered. Although his memory was a little fuzzy, it seemed that there really was such a thing. In that case, that Ling Yi is definitely Lin Yi in disguise? Si Haishao asked hurriedly. There's absolutely no mistake. Wufu Ling Yi and Lin Yi are 100% the same person. I can guarantee this with my head. Patriarch Xianqian swore solemnly. Wonderful. This is wonderful. In that case, the Snow Sword faction has no choice but to be this free fighter. Let's go. Let's go to the Snow Sword faction now. Southern Polar Light immediately made the decision excitedly. Once this scheme succeeded, even if the will of heaven pursued the matter in the future, the hatred would only fall on the Snow Sword faction, and the three of them wouldn't need to bear the slightest risk. It was simply wonderful. Southern Polar Light immediately brought Si Haishao and Patriarch Xianqian to the Snow Sword faction. With his status and position as the Cultivator Academy's vice dean, the higher-ups of the Snow Sword faction had already come out to welcome them before they even entered. Even though he had lost the competition for the position of Middle Island's vice island master and was beaten black and blue by the will of heaven, he, Southern Polar Light, was still one of the few profound ascension initial stage experts of Middle Island. Furthermore, he had a wide network. No matter which faction he went to, he would be a highly sought-after guest. It's been a few days. How have you been, Elder Situ? Southern Polar Light greeted with a smile. Coincidentally, the Snow Sword faction's higher-up elder who came out to welcome them this time was Situ Qin's grandfather, Situ Guangzong. Dean Southern Polar Light is an esteemed guest that we can't even invite. You've really brought light to our humble Snow Sword faction by coming from afar. Please, come in. Situ Guangzong cupped his hands in greeting with a smile. However, Situ Guangzong couldn't help but feel bewildered. He had personally witnessed Southern Polar Light being knocked off the Middle Cauldron Mountain by the will of heaven. Like most people, Situ Guangzong had originally thought that even if Southern Polar Light didn't die, he would become a cripple. He didn't expect that in just a few days, he would recover to such high spirits. How strange. It must be known that the effects of a top-grade 4th-grade Great Returning Pill were no longer that obvious for profound ascension experts. As they chatted and joked, Southern Polar Light and the other two were invited to the main seats in the living room. Situ Guangzong had even specially ordered people to prepare top-grade spirit tea and entertain them attentively. One doesn't visit for no reason. I've come to your esteemed sect this time because I have an important piece of news that I believe needs to be reported to your esteemed sect. Southern Polar Light went straight to the point. Important news? Situ Guangzong was slightly taken aback. Then, he said, "Please speak, Dean Southern Polar Light. I'm all ears." Chapter 4151. That's right. This is indeed the case. That way Shinjin is not an outsider. He is my grandson-in-law. Originally, he was a seedling with boundless prospects. Who would have thought that something like this would happen? Sigh. Situ Guangzong sighed. He had originally thought highly of Wei Shinjin and had been trying to matchmake Situ Qian and Wei Shinjin. Unexpectedly, they had only been married for a few days before he was beaten into a cripple. He had gone from a potential stock to a trash stock. How could he endure this? Elder Situ, why don't you call him over to see me? I believe he has been waiting for this news for a long time. Nantian Aurora pretended to be profound and kept them in suspense. Could it be? Situ Guangzong's eyes immediately lit up. He had already guessed the reason. He immediately agreed. All right. Dean Nantian, please wait for a moment. This old man will get someone to call him over. Oh, right. Invite Elder Wei Feng as well. He is also from the Wei clan and has some blood ties with Wei Shinjin. He has always been very concerned about this matter. That's even better. Elder Situ, feel free to invite him over. Nantian Aurora, Si Hai Xiao, and the others nodded in agreement. They had come this time to get someone else to do their dirty work. Of course, the more the merrier. Having an elder class expert was something they could not ask for more. It would be best if the entire Snow Sword School turned out in full force. Situ Guangzong immediately gave an order to the Snow Sword School disciples guarding the door, telling them to split up and call someone over. Meanwhile, he continued chatting and laughing with Nantian Aurora and the others. After a while, Wei Feng led the way in. He was a middle-aged man with a dignified appearance. His strength could be considered a first-rate existence in the Snow Sword School. Behind him were Wei Shinjin and Situ Qian. Situ Guangzong introduced them. After exchanging some pleasantries, they got to the main topic. Nantian Aurora cleared his throat and said, I won't hide it from you all. The news I have brought this time is regarding that Wu Fuling who has been wanted by the entire city all this time, but there has been no news of him. Wu Fuling. When the others heard this, they were immediately startled. Even if Situ Guangzong had guessed this beforehand, they would not be able to do so. As for Wei Feng, his expression abruptly changed. Wei Shinjin was a disciple that he had personally nurtured. Now, his many years of painstaking effort had been destroyed in a single day. His hatred for that Wu Fuling was no less than anyone else's. Among the people present, Wei Shinjin was not as shocked as he was when he heard the news. His hatred was now completely transferred to Situ Qian, the B*TCH, even though the one who injured him was Wu Fuling. However, strictly speaking, both of them were just pawns that had been provoked by someone else. Situ Qian, the slut, was the one who deserved to be sliced into pieces. As for Situ Qian, she did not care about this at all. All she wanted to do now was to find a wild man to have sex with. It would be best if he was taller than senior brother Ma and had a decent appearance. Where is he? Has he already escaped to the outer islands? Situ Guangzong asked on behalf of everyone. No, he is currently on the middle island. Furthermore, he is living a grand life. Nantian Aurora shook his head indifferently. How is that possible? Situ Guangzong and the others exchanged glances. The Snow Sword faction had put out a bounty for Wu Fuling. Even though they had withdrawn quite a number of people over the past few days, they had not stopped the bounty for the entire city. If Wu Fuling was still on the middle island, how could he be living a grand life without them knowing? The bounty offered by their Snow Sword faction was not low at all. That's the truth. The reason why he could hide from the eyes and ears of your esteemed sect is actually very simple. He has simply changed his appearance. Nantion Aurora curled his lips and smiled. Dean Nantion, do you mean that Wu Fuling is currently wearing a human skin mask and has changed his appearance? Situ Guangzong and the others exchanged glances. Such a thing was actually not new. There had been people from the Snow Sword faction who had made such a conjecture before. However, even so, they did not know what the other party had changed into, so they had no way of dealing with it. On the contrary, Wu Fuling is merely a human skin mask. This is his original appearance. As for his current identity, I'm sure everyone has heard of it. Elder Situ might have even seen him face to face on that day at the Island Lord Pavilion on the Middle Cauldron Mountain. He is the brother-in-law of the Will of Heaven, as well as the owner of the Tiandan Pavilion, Lin Yi. Nantion Aurora finally revealed the truth. That Lin Yi is Wu Fuling Yi? Situ Guangzong and the others were instantly shocked. The Will of Heaven and the Tiandan Pavilion had two great influences. Currently, Lin Yi's name had gradually entered the sights of the mainstream circles of the Middle Island. There were quite a few people who had heard of his name. Do you have any proof, Dean Nantion? Wei Feng asked in a deep voice. He was not familiar with Nantion Aurora, so he could not help but be suspicious when he suddenly heard such a thing. After all, if Lin Yi and Wu Fuling were really the same person, then the things he had done before were somewhat unimaginable. For example, eloping with Sydney. If Wu Fuling had the powerful backing of the Will of Heaven, he could take Sydney away with just a word. The Snow Sword faction would not reject him for a mere maidservant. Why would he need to change his appearance and secretly elope? Of course we do. Why would we use such a thing to deceive your faction? What good would that do us? Nantion Aurora, Si Haishao, and the others looked at each other. Then, they told them the whole story of Lin Yi, including the proof that Lin Yi was Wu Fuling Yi. From the secular world, he had killed his way up to the Heaven Stage Island in less than a year. He had befriended a super expert like the Will of Heaven. Now, he had even opened the Tiandan Pavilion and become the owner of a rich family. Lin Yi's legendary experience had truly left everyone dumbfounded. In particular, Situ Qian's eyes were shining. If she had known that this guy was so powerful, she would not have let him meet Sydney. She would have kept him for her own use. Not only did he have such powerful strength and background, he also had so many female confidants. His ability in that aspect was definitely heaven-defying. He was practically a golden tortoise that was hard to find in this world. Sigh, what a pity. As Situ Qian regretted her actions, she fantasized about the scene of her and Lin Yi having fun together. Her body suddenly felt something, and she unconsciously squirmed a few times. Even her breathing had started to quicken. While Wei Shenjin was shocked, he noticed Situ Qian's lascivious appearance. Without even asking, he could guess what this slut was thinking. He could not help but clench his fists in anger, his joints cracking. This shameless slut that had been ridden by 1,000 men. Situ Guangzong and the others glanced at Wei Shenjin. They thought that he was just too angry after hearing about Lin Yi, his great enemy. This was human nature, so they did not notice anything strange. If not for Dean Nantion and everyone else, we would still be in the dark. This old man can't thank you enough on behalf of the entire Snow Sword faction. After listening to Nantion Aurora's narration, Situ Guangzong sincerely expressed his gratitude. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4152. That's good, that's good. I've specially come to deliver this information this time, just to voice my grievances on behalf of your sect. After all, the matter has become so big. No matter what, you should resolve it as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will be detrimental to your sect's reputation, Nantion Aurora said, feigning righteousness. That's right. Now that your sect knows that Lin Yi is Wu Fuling Yi, you should take action as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will be easy for others to laugh at you. That won't be good. Si Haishao chimed in. This? Situ Guangzong did not directly reply. After exchanging glances with Wei Feng, he said, although that's the case, we still have to treat this matter seriously. We must first find a way to verify it. Otherwise, the Will of Heaven is not to be trifled with. Nantian Aurora and the others were not the only ones who were afraid of the will of heaven. Their snow sword school was the same. Not only was the other party terrifyingly powerful, but they also had the high and mighty Vice Island Master of Middle Island. Even if the snow sword school was large, if they were to recklessly go against such a fiendish god, they would still suffer in the end. Verify it? How does your sect intend to verify it? You can't possibly go to the secular world to verify it, right? Nantian Aurora, Si Haishao, and Patriarch Shinshin all frowned, thinking that the Snow Sword School was indeed not so easy to borrow. That won't be necessary. The price to pay is too great. In fact, if we want to verify it, we only need to make a trip to the Tiandan Pavilion and see if we can find Sydney. Situ Guangzong smiled. Then, he turned away Shinjin and instructed, Shunjin, pretend to be a customer and go to the Tiandan Pavilion. You don't need to do anything else. You just need to recognize the person and verify it. Yes. Wei Shinjin immediately nodded in response. Grandpa, let me go as well. I can cover for him. Situ Qian quickly volunteered. Her eyes were filled with uncontrollable excitement and joy. Right now, all her thoughts were on Lin Yi. If she could hook up with Lin Yi, then what ugly senior apprentice brother Ma? She would be able to kick him aside. Lin Yi looked like a warrior, rough, but it wasn't bad at all. Situ Guangzong naturally had no objections to this and immediately nodded his head in agreement. Wei Shinjin, on the other hand, was sneering in his heart. He knew exactly what this slut was thinking. A woman could actually be so licentious to this extent. She was truly a unique scorpion shitting on her. However, on the surface, Wei Shinjin was still calm and collected. After putting on the bamboo hat to cover his appearance. Thus, he followed Situ Qian to the Tiandan Pavilion. As for Situ Guangzong and Wei Feng, they stayed behind to entertain Southern Polar Light and the others while waiting for news. The two of them didn't speak on the way, and they soon arrived at the Tiandan Pavilion. As soon as they stepped through the door, they saw Sydney's busy figure. Although her face was covered, her figure and temperament were obvious. The two of them could recognize it at a glance. It really is Sydney. Wei Shinjin was shocked. At first, he really liked Sydney, but he didn't expect that there would be so many twists and turns. Now, things were the same, but people were different. He ended up as a cripple, which made people sigh. Seeing that way, Shinjin's gaze was fixed on Sydney's busy figure. Situ Qian, who was at the side, smiled. She didn't have any feelings of jealousy. After all, what was so good about being jealous of a cripple? Brother Wei, don't you like Sydney? Then why don't you stay here and take a look at her? I'll go take a look at that Ling Yi and carefully identify him so that we don't wrongly accuse him. Situ Qian said softly. Without waiting for Wei Shinjin's reply, she left him alone and went to look for Lin Yi. Wei Shinjin was so angry that his whole body trembled. If it was in the past, before he was beaten into a cripple, Situ Qian would be jealous if he even looked at another woman. But now, in Situ Qian's eyes, he was just a servant's plaything. He didn't have any status at all. As for their nominal relationship as husband and wife, it would only bring him more pain and humiliation. Looking at Situ Qian's coquettish back view, Wei Shinjin clenched his fists tightly and didn't flare up. When he looked at Sydney again, he was no longer as agitated as before. He was much calmer and more indifferent. Just now, when Southern Aurora and the others were talking about Lin Yi, Patriarch Shinshin had mentioned that Lin Yi and Sydney had already been together since they were in the secular world. In other words, he was the one who had interfered. It was no wonder that Lin Yi would elope with Sydney. Wei Shinjin wasn't an unreasonable person. Now that he thought about it, he realized that all of this was actually because of that B*TCH, Situ Qian, who had added fuel to the fire behind the scenes. She had benefited from the situation, which caused him, Lin Yi, and Sydney to become enemies. The source of all his tragedies was this B*T. Now, he had been cuckolded, which was a great humiliation. He couldn't bear it. Wei Shinjin glanced at Sydney from afar, then turned around to look for Situ Qian. He wanted to see what this B*TCH was going to do to Lin Yi. As for Sydney, he no longer had any extravagant hopes. Frankly speaking, Wei Shinjin's only wish now was to find an opportunity to kill Situ Qian. He wouldn't hesitate even if he had to perish together with her. Unfortunately, with his current strength and situation, even this wish would be difficult to achieve without a special opportunity. On the second floor of the Tiandan Pavilion, there weren't any elixirs for sale. However, there were a few private rooms. Other than for Lin Yi and the others, there were also rooms for receiving guests. Wei Shinjin saw that one of the doors was open. As expected, it was Situ Qian's voice coming from inside. Without saying anything, he immediately held his breath and leaned against the wall, silently eavesdropping. "My name is Situ Qian. I wonder if shopkeeper Lin still recognizes me?" Situ Qian said with a flirtatious smile on her face. She looked at Lin Yi's handsome face from head to toe as she drooled in her heart. Compared to Wu Fu's rough look, he was much more attractive. She couldn't tell that he was a fresh piece of meat. "Miss Situ, you must have mistaken me for someone else." Lin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. He was still thinking about how to get rid of Situ Qian. He didn't expect her to come knocking on his door. It seemed like she already knew his real identity, which surprised him a little. How could that be? "I've always been very accurate when it comes to judging people. I would never mistake them for someone else. However, if shopkeeper Lin insists on acting dumb, then there's nothing I can do about it." Situ Qian continued to look at Lin Yi. Lin Yi looked at her coldly. Suddenly, a murderous intent rose in his heart. He had already planned to get rid of this threat, but this woman still dared to come knocking on his door and threaten him. She really didn't know how to write the word death. Since shopkeeper Lin doesn't want to admit it, how about we make a deal? You're a businessman now anyway. After listening to me, I believe you'll agree. Situ Qian didn't sense the danger at all. Instead, she smiled and moved closer to Lin Yi. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4153. A deal? Lin Yi asked calmly. He wanted to hear what this woman wanted to say. Although he could kill her effortlessly with his current strength, he had to first confirm how many people knew about his identity. "That's right. Since I'm already here, I'm sure you know that your identity as Wu Fu Lingyi has been exposed. It's useless to pretend in front of me, because I'm not the first person to know about this. The ones who really exposed you are actually the old enemies you've already provoked in the secular world. Southern Aurora, Shinshin, and the others. Do you understand what I mean now?" Situ Qian looked at Lin Yi with an even more unscrupulous gaze. In her eyes, since she had already confirmed the secret of Lin Yi's identity, Lin Yi was already a piece of fresh meat in her mouth. He couldn't escape even if he wanted to. "What do you mean?" Lin Yi's expression remained indifferent, but the killing intent in his heart was like raging waves. He really didn't expect Southern Aurora and the others to join forces with the Snow Sword faction. Now, the problem he had to face was not as simple as a hidden danger. If he didn't handle it well, it was highly likely that this matter would turn into a fatal threat. Even if he had the protection of the will of heaven, his opponents were Southern Aurora and the Snow Sword faction. Their strength was not to be underestimated. In fact, Lin Yi had already decided not to return to the North Island for the time being. If he didn't resolve this crisis properly, he wouldn't feel at ease leaving Tianshan and Sydney here and going back alone. What I mean is very simple. Although they have some guesses about your identity, they aren't completely sure yet. I'm here to check things out, so you don't have to be afraid. As long as you listen to me, I can help you cover up when I return. That way, no one will know that you're Wu Fu Lingyi. What do you think? Situ Qian's coquettish body moved closer to Lin Yi. "Don't worry, I won't force you to do anything dangerous, and I won't let you suffer. I'll just do something that both men and women love to do." With that, Situ Qian reached out to hook her arms around Lin Yi's neck. At the same time, she fell into Lin Yi's arms. Although it was broad daylight and there was a lot of noise downstairs, she could not wait to have sex with Lin Yi. It would be more exciting. It was more to her liking. However, Lin Yi pushed her away and looked at her coldly. "Miss Situ, you've got the wrong person. I'm not the Wu Fu Lingyi you're talking about." "Huh, you're still quibbling at this point? Lin Yi, you really won't give up until you reach the Yellow River." Situ Qian was furious. She pointed at Lin Yi's nose and said, "Fine, Lin Yi, just you wait. When our Snow Sword School captures you, let's see who can save you." Seeing that Lin Yi was still indifferent, Situ Qian paused for a moment. Then, she softened her tone and tried to persuade him. Lin Yi, you have to think this through. You'll be mine sooner or later. However, when that time comes, you'll become a toy boy with no status. Don't be so shameless. It's not too late to regret it. If you agree, I'll go back and find a way to kill Wei Shenjin. Then, we'll get married. Wei Shenjin, who was outside the room, was infuriated when he heard these words. If he had the strength, he would rush in and strangle this bitch to death. Unfortunately, he was now a useless person without any strength. He couldn't even die together with her. So, he could only choose to endure. All right, you don't have to say anymore. I'm not the Wu Fu Ling you're looking for. So, Miss Situ, please go back. Lin Yi cut her off unceremoniously. Initially, he had wanted to kill Situ Qian, but doing so would alert the enemy. Southern Aurora and the others, as well as the Snow Sword faction, were the true threats. With his strength alone, he would not be able to deal with them. He would have to discuss this with Tianxing. Good. You've got guts? Let's wait and see. You won't be able to escape from me sooner or later. Situ Qian immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. She turned around and slammed the door. When she saw Wei Shenjin walking down the stairs, she was slightly stunned. However, she didn't even bother to call out to him and left angrily. In response, Lin Yi just shrugged his shoulders indifferently. With the strong protection of the will of heaven, even if Southern Aurora and the Snow Sword School confirmed his identity, there wouldn't be much risk. At the very least, these people wouldn't have the guts to come and capture him. He could deal with them as much as he wanted. However, this woman Situ Qian was unimaginably despicable. She actually used this as a threat to force him to fool around with her. What a weirdo. While he was speechless, someone suddenly came in from the door and knelt down without saying anything, which gave Lin Yi a fright. After taking a closer look at the person's appearance, Lin Yi was even more surprised. It was Wei Shenjin, who had been crippled by him. Lin Yi, I don't blame you for hurting me. I know that it's all because of that vicious bitch Situ Qian. That's why I'm in this state today. Wei Shenjin took the initiative to speak. But you don't have to do this, right? Are you going to acknowledge me as your master, or what? Lin Yi asked with a strange expression. He even suspected that this guy was putting on an act, deliberately tricking him into confessing his identity. However, Lin Yi could also see that Situ Qian's words about killing Wei Shenjin were not made up. He really felt a killing intent from Situ Qian. At that time, he had already sensed that Wei Shenjin should be outside the door. There was no reason for him to play along with Situ Qian's act. No, I'm not going to acknowledge you as my master. Wei Shenjin shook his head and took a deep breath. I just want to ask you to do something for me. Help me kill that bitch Situ Qian. Kill Situ Qian? Lin Yi's eyelids twitched. This couple was really a weirdo. They both wanted to kill each other. It was really a case of enemies meeting each other. I know that with your power and strength, you can definitely do it. Now, there is no one who can help me, only you. Wei Shenjin said with a bitter expression. If there was any other choice, he would never kneel to Lin Yi. Even if Situ Qian was playing tricks, it was still Lin Yi who had injured him. This was an indisputable fact. Right now, he was truly at his wit's end. There was really no one else he could ask for help from. No one in the Snow Sword School would offend a powerful elder like Situ Guangzong for a cripple like him. Even his backer, Wei Feng, might not be willing to help him do such a thing. I can kill her, but why? Lin Yi narrowed his eyes. Even if Situ Qian was originally on his list of targets, it was completely different from helping Wei Shenjin kill someone. Not to mention that Lin Yi might not be willing to do this favor, at least for now. He and Wei Shenjin were not on the same side. They were far from colluding to kill someone. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4154. Wei Shenjin choked on his words as he came back to his senses. Yeah, why would Lin Yi help him for no reason at all? The reason why he suddenly knelt before Lin Yi was because he suddenly realized that it was impossible for him to kill Situ Qian. He was a cripple, and it was impossible for him to kill Situ Qian with his own hands. If there was anyone in the world who was willing to kill Situ Qian, it would be Lin Yi, who was standing in front of him. However, Lin Yi was backed by the mighty will of heaven and was the owner of the Tiandan Pavilion. His status was unparalleled. On the other hand, Wei Shenjin was now a cripple. His strength was not even comparable to a slightly stronger ordinary person. Why would he need Lin Yi's help? Moreover, although it was the bitch Situ Qian who instigated the conflict, strictly speaking, they still had a grudge against each other. Even if he transferred all his hatred to Situ Qian, it did not mean that Lin Yi would do the same. Previously, it was Situ Qian who set me up and instigated me to misunderstand you and Shuali. That's why I was so impulsive and offended you. Wei Shenjin fell to the ground in despair and helplessness. He muttered to himself, but now, I've seen the true face of this bitch. She's just a whore who has been ridden by thousands of men. She's a vicious woman with a venomous heart. Linny looked at him and didn't say anything to interrupt. To be honest, he thought that Wei Shenjin and Situ Qian were just a couple who were in cahoots with each other, but now it seemed that there was more to it than meets the eye. After I became a cripple, she shamelessly ran around with that ugly Ma Shangfeng. She did not respect me, her real husband, at all. She even wanted to kill me so that I would not be an eyesore to her. Do you think there is a bitch more shameless than her in this world? Wei Shenjin forced a smile and exposed his own dirty linen. He told her everything that had happened to Situ Qian, including the boy toy and the artificial membrane. He did not hide anything. Linny was stunned after hearing this. He already knew that Situ Qian was not a good person. However, after hearing what Wei Shenjin said, he was still shocked. There was actually a woman who was even more despicable than Morong Zhan in this world. Situ Qian was really a weirdo. I'm very clear about that traitor's temperament. Since she has her eyes on you, it's impossible for her to let go so easily. When she returns, she'll definitely think of a way to stir up trouble. She's a natural slut, and she'll do anything to get you. Furthermore, I believe that you're a gentleman, and you definitely won't be willing to collude with such a scoundrel. So, if you don't kill her, you'll definitely be in trouble, and you won't be able to get rid of it. Wei Shenjin earnestly advised. However, if I were to kill him, the entire Snow Sword School would definitely be enraged. Once this pill was consumed, the person would have to listen to the person who gave it wholeheartedly. Otherwise, the person's heart would be devoured by thousands of bugs. This thing, unless it was an expert in the art of goo, even the best pharmacist, or even a doctor saint like Zhang Liju, might not be able to cure it. After all, everyone had their own specializations, and they weren't in the same system. Conventional thinking and experience wouldn't work at all. As for the high-grade spiritual pet talisman that Wei Shenjin had mentioned, with Lin Yi's current wealth and connections, it was not hard to get it. His control over it was far above the heart-devouring poisonous pill, and he could turn Wei Shenjin into a puppet. However, this thing had its drawbacks. Once something happened to the spiritual pet, the owner would suffer a huge backlash as well. Back then, Meng Tong was spitting out blood because of the black-back stick ape. Wei Shenjin had already made it clear that he was prepared to die with Situ Qian. If Linny still took him in as a spiritual pet, wouldn't he be waiting for the backlash? The heart-devouring poisonous pill was the safest choice. This was similar to the poison he gave Dafeng Bro in the common world. He had enough control over it, and he didn't have to worry about any side effects. However, a few days before he left, Linny had already given the antidote to Chuntian and asked him to bring it to Dafeng Bro, or 1152. Chapter 4155. This is called the Heart-Devouring Curse Pill. Eat it, and I will believe you. Lin Yi returned to the living room and handed the heart-devouring curse pill to Wei Shenjin. You betrayed me. You will die a horrible death. After receiving the heart-devouring curse pill, Wei Shenjin swallowed it without hesitation. He was already prepared to be Lin Yi's pet. Why would he be afraid of this small pill? Is it okay now? Now you don't have to worry about me betraying you, and you can attack that B*TCH Situ Qian, right? Although Wei Shenjin didn't know what he was eating, he was sure that it was something similar to controlling him, so he said impatiently, Well, I'll leave that to you. Linny smiled faintly. What? I'll kill her myself? I'm a useless person now. How can I kill her? Wei Shenjin was stunned. When he reacted, he was furious. He said sadly and helplessly, You tricked me? He'd bet everything on Lin Yi, even his life and dignity, but all he got in return was Lin Yi telling him to kill him. How the hell could he accept that? Hee, I never lie. Since I told you to kill her yourself, I will naturally give you the ability. Why would I trick you? Lin Yi smiled faintly and gestured for Wei Shenjin to meditate at the side. Sit down first. I will help you recover your damaged meridians. Recover meridians? Wei Shenjin was shocked. He immediately threw his sadness and helplessness to the back of his mind. He stared at Lin Yi in disbelief. How is this possible? Don't lie to me. My meridians have been shattered by you. Even the 4th grade recover pill and the 5th grade meridian conduit pill have no effect. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a useless person. You should know this. I know. The meridian conduit pill doesn't work, but that doesn't mean I can't heal you. Do you know that the will of heaven's meridians were shattered just like yours? It's even more serious than yours. Aren't you still as lively as before? Lin Yi smiled faintly. You healed the will of heaven? Wei Shenjin paled as he looked at Lin Yi. He was so shocked that he couldn't speak. The will of heaven's recovery was a mystery in the whole of Zhongdao. No one knew who did it. Some said it was the mysterious medicine master. Some said it was Zhang Liju's painstaking research. There were all sorts of theories. The will of heaven never came out to clarify anything. The will of heaven himself? The pill hall of the hall didn't say anything. Wei Shenjin had never imagined that this was actually the work of Lin Yi. If it was someone else who said this, Wei Shenjin would definitely think that this person was talking nonsense and trying to flatter himself. However, it was Lin Yi, so he believed it without hesitation. Otherwise, with the status of a legendary master like the will of heaven, even if Lin Yi was his brother-in-law, how could he try so hard to protect Lin Yi, a new disciple of the 3 pavilions in the North Island? He did not answer Wei Shenjin's question. Lin Yi directly gave him the answer with his actions. In just a short 2 hours, Wei Shenjin was shocked to discover that all the meridians in his body had been shattered. It had miraculously recovered to its original state. This is simply a miracle. Wei Shenjin instantly fell into a state of ecstasy. He was originally a cripple who had lost all hope and was just a walking corpse with no future. The only reason for him to continue living was to kill that bitch, Situ Qian. However, he did not expect that the surprise would come so suddenly. For a moment, Wei Shenjin was so excited that he could not even speak. He opened his mouth to speak to Lin Yi, but did not know how to express his gratitude. Without saying a word, he knelt down again with a plop and kowtowed to Lin Yi 3 times in a row. You don't have to do this. Hurry up and get up. Lin Yi hurried forward to help him up. Although his meridians were also shattered like the will of heaven, Wei Shenjin's injury was much lighter. Unlike the will of heaven's old injury that had accumulated for many years, it was easy for him to repair, and it did not take much effort. Lin Yi, oh no, Boss Lin Yi, you are my second parent. You deserve these kowtows, Wei Shenjin said firmly. Not to mention that Lin Yi had already fed him the heart-devouring vermin. Even without it, he was not an ungrateful person. He was grateful from the bottom of his heart, without any pretense. Lin Yi smiled. He'd seen a lot of people since he'd been in the common world. He could tell whether Wei Shenjin was sincere or not with just one look. Just from this performance alone, Lin Yi could tell that this guy was a man who knew how to repay kindness. Taking someone like this as a follower wasn't a bad deal. Boss Lin Yi, I will go back and kill Situ Qian, the bitch, Wei Shenjin said with a murderous look. He was about to leave with his sword. Although his meridians had just recovered, he was confident that he could quickly regain his strength and kill Situ Qian. Wait, Lin Yi stopped him. If you go back and kill her like this, even if you are a core disciple of the Snow Sword faction, you will not be able to escape punishment. Who cares? Wei Shenjin did not care, and said angrily, This woman has brought me such great shame. If I don't kill her, how can there be justice in the world? Before, I was not strong enough, so I had no choice but to drag out an ignoble existence. But now, I can't stand it anymore. Even if I die, I will drag this bitch down with me. For such a shameless bitch, you will die with her. Is there any meaning? Linny looked at him coldly and said, Don't forget, your life is mine now. I spent so much effort to cure you, not to let you die with this bitch. But what should I do? Boss Linny, I really can't stand it anymore. Wei Shenjin finally calmed down a little, but he was still tempted. He had already realized that he was different from before. Earlier, he was a hopeless cripple. If he could drag Situ Qian down with him, it would be worth it. But now, he had become a core disciple of the early stage of the Gold Core realm with a bright future. If he wanted to exchange his life with a bitch like Situ Qian, it would only be stupid. Wait here for me for a moment. Linny smiled, turned around, and went out to make 2 kinds of medicine. When he came back, he gave them to Wei Shenjin. This? You want me to poison that bitch? Wei Shenjin said in surprise. Of course not. If it was just a simple poison, Situ Qian's death would be easily traced back to you. What's the difference between that and you directly killing Situ Qian? The 2 medicines I gave you are the right medicine. Even if Situ Qian dies in the end, no one will suspect you. Linny smiled and shook his head. The right medicine? What do you mean? Wei Shenjin was still confused. To be continued. Chapter 4156. It's very simple. When you get back, take the initiative to please Situ Qian. Then, both of you will take the first drug. By then, both of you will be very happy. I guarantee that the effect will be even better than the one in the Central Chamber of Commerce. Linny explained. Do I have to pretend to please that bitch? Alright, I'll listen to Boss Lin Yi. When Wei Shenjin thought of Situ Qian's face, he felt disgusted. It was fine if she did not have the strength, but she had the strength. But since Linny had said so, he could only nod and agree. With Situ Qian's slutty nature, after tasting the sweetness, she will definitely take the drug and secretly find her lover, Ma Shangfeng. When that time comes, just let her take the second drug. Lin Yi continued to teach. Oh, all right. But what's the difference between the second drug? Wei Shenjin asked curiously. Of course, the second drug's effect is even stronger than the first one. But there's also a problem. Linny laughed and said, if a man takes it, it will cause his kidney water acupuncture point to become stagnant, causing him to lose his yang energy and die. But you reminded me that the name Ma Shangfeng is quite a good match. If a woman takes it, she will become dizzy. Her body will act like a natural instinct and will not be able to stop. In the end, her heart will not be able to withstand the extreme excitement and she will die. Pfft. Good. That's great. Boss Lin Yi is really a god. This kind of drug that kills without leaving a trace is practically made for that bitch couple. It's impossible for them not to fall for it. Wei Shenjin was overjoyed. If he did what Linny said, he wouldn't need to take any risks at all. It was all Situ Qian's fault, and no one from the Snow's Word School would suspect Wei Shenjin anymore. They'd only think that the couple was a shameless couple and deserved to die. Wei Shenjin didn't know what to do. When you go back this time, be careful not to reveal your strength. If you are exposed, Situ Qian might not go to Ma Shangfeng anymore. If that happens, our plan will be ruined. Linny reminded him. Don't worry, Boss Linny, I understand. That slut is shameless to the extreme. She had an affair with that ugly Ma Shangfeng because she didn't like Ma Shangfeng at all. She was just fooling around to satisfy her cravings. If she finds out that I've recovered, she'll definitely shamelessly stick to me again. You will continue to act innocent in front of me and play me like a fool. Wei Shenjin nodded. That's right, that's what I'm trying to say. After Situ Qian's death, I'm afraid that you, as her husband, will still have to be investigated. When that time comes, make sure to clean up the traces. Blame the 2 drugs that I gave you on Situ Qian. Tell her that she secretly bought them from the Central Chamber of Commerce. Tell them about your helplessness and sorrow. At that time, it would be unavoidable for him to attract the attention of those apex bigwigs and be pushed to the heart of the struggle. On the contrary, If he pushed everything on the will of heaven and said that he had recovered by himself, then even if others had doubts, they wouldn't be able to verify it. After all, they couldn't just go to the will of heaven and ask him directly. Besides, even if they asked, the will of heaven would cooperate with Lin Yi's act, and they wouldn't be able to get the truth out of him. It's not a problem to put the matter on Senior the will of heaven, but Boss Lin Yi, it might not be of any use for me to say that you are Wu Fu Ling Yi. After all, Southern Aurora and the others have sworn that you are Wu Fu Ling Yi. Even if I go back and deny it, the higher-ups of the Snow Sword faction will only be skeptical and won't directly cancel the wanted order. Wei Shenjin awkwardly scratched his head. Just a moment ago, he had sworn that he would do anything for Lin Yi, but in the blink of an eye, he was stumped by such a small matter. During this period of time, Wei Shenjin increasingly felt that his intelligence was insufficient. That's simple. After you go back, just tell them that they don't dare to confirm my identity. Furthermore, the will of heaven often appears here, so even if they confirm it, they can't make a move. Let them decide. Lin Yi paused for a moment before continuing. As for the matter of canceling the wanted order, wait until you publicly recover. Just say that although you were injured by someone in Tiandan Pavilion, the will of heaven also healed your injuries, so they offset each other. With Big Brother the will of heaven's face here, I believe that the higher-ups of the Snow Sword faction will be sensible. Chapter 4157. To Lin Yi, it was not a big threat to him whether or not he removed the wanted order. He did it mainly for Sydney's sake. Before returning to the North Island, he had to get rid of all the potential threats. All right, I understand. Boss Lin Yi, you're right. The higher-ups are indeed very afraid of Senior the will of heaven. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let us come here first to verify it. Wei Shenjin agreed. All right, then you can go back now. Just do as I said just now and act according to the plan, Lin Yi said with a nod. All right, Boss Lin Yi, don't worry and wait for my good news. Wei Shenjin bid farewell to Lin Yi with cupped hands, then turned around and left eagerly. He could not wait to kill that B*TsH Situ Qian. After returning to Snow Sword faction, the first thing Wei Shenjin did was naturally to report to Situ Guangzong and the others. As he had expected, that B*Th Situ Qian was indeed not there. Shenjin, you're back. Tell us, did you see Sydney? Can you confirm that Lin Yi is Wu Fu Ling Yi? Situ Guangzong and the others asked hurriedly. Seeing everyone's reaction, Wei Shenjin understood. Situ Qian had other plans for Lin Yi that she had not reported to these people. He immediately heaved a sigh of relief. I didn't see Sydney, but I did see Lin Yi. Judging from his temperament, he is very different from Wu Fu Ling Yi. I can't be sure that the two are the same person. Moreover, I heard that the will of heaven appears there every few days. Even if I can confirm it, I can't do anything to him in Tiandan Pavilion. Wei Shenjin reported according to Lin Yi's instructions. Can't be sure? How is that possible? Nantian Aurora, Si Haishao, Patriarch Xianqin, and the others immediately exchanged glances. This matter was not fabricated out of thin air to fool the Snow Sword faction. Instead, it was something that was already set in stone. How could they not be certain? This disciple is merely stating the facts and doesn't dare to jump to conclusions. Otherwise, this disciple can't afford to rashly bring unnecessary disaster to the sect. Wei Shenjin shrugged. Since that's the case, I'll have to find a chance to test it out in the future. After all, this matter is of great importance, and I hope that Dean Nantian can understand. No matter what, our sect will always remember everyone's good intentions, Situ Guangzong said after a moment of silence. He had also thought it through. Although Wu Fu Lin Yi had to be captured, and this concerned the reputation of the entire Snow Sword School, unless there was solid evidence, he would not act recklessly against Lin Yi and Tiandan Pavilion. After all, it was best not to provoke a troublesome demon like the will of heaven. Otherwise, something big would happen. Even an elder like Situ Guangzong, who held real power, would not be able to bear such a heavy responsibility. Then, all right, this is your sect's matter. After all, we're just reminding you out of goodwill. We're just afraid that if this matter drags on, it will affect your sect's reputation. Since your sect is not anxious, we have nothing else to say, Nantion Aurora said indifferently, somewhat dissatisfied. Dean Nantion, you're exaggerating. The information you provided is a timely rain for us. Our entire sect can't thank you enough. As for that Linyi, if he really is Wufu Lingyi, we will definitely not let him off. Situ Guangzong hurriedly smiled apologetically. It's getting late. This old man has already gotten people to prepare a banquet. Everyone, please stay and have a few drinks. Let us properly perform our duties as hosts. Otherwise, we won't be able to rest easy. Nantion Aurora and the others exchanged glances. Although the Snow Sword School had an attitude, as long as they said a few more words, there was still a possibility that they could deal with Lin Yi. There was no need to make their relationship too stiff. They immediately nodded in agreement. The two elders, Situ Guangzong and Wei Feng, appeared to entertain Nantion Aurora and the others. As for a small fry like Wei Shenjin, he was merely a cripple in everyone's eyes. Naturally, he didn't have the qualifications to sit at the table and was sent home by Situ Guangzong. However, this was exactly what Wei Shenjin wanted. He wasn't like Lin Yi, who was good at hiding his strength. In just a few words, he was already on the verge of being exposed. Fortunately, his meridians had just recovered, and his strength was only showing signs of recovering slightly. In addition, everyone thought that he was a cripple and didn't pay much attention to him. Otherwise, experts like Nantion Aurora and Situ Guangzong would probably be able to see through him. If that happened, the plan that Linyi had given him would be ruined. After returning to his room, Wei Shenjin was somewhat surprised to discover that Situ Qian, the hussy, had not gone to look for her senior brother Ma to have some fun. Instead, she was sitting in the room, sulking, while her maid, little Qiuhua, accompanied her and consoled her. It seems that this slut is really interested in big brother Linyi, Wei Shenjin sneered. Then, he stepped into the room and deliberately squeezed out a smile. He said to Situ Qian, Qianer, I just found something good in Tiandan Pavilion. Why don't we try it now? Something good? What is it? Situ Qian frowned and glanced at him. It's something good to liven up the mood. I heard that it's very effective. It's the only one of its kind. Wei Shenjin immediately took out the 2 packets of medicine that Linyi had given him. The packaging looked exactly the same. As for which packet was problematic and which was not, only he knew. Something good to liven up the mood? Tiandan Pavilion actually sells this stuff? Quick, let me have a look. Situ Qian, who was originally depressed, immediately became spirited when she heard this. Her eyes lit up as she took the first packet of medicine from Wei Shenjin. Little Qiuhua, who was beside her, also came over excitedly. Sure enough, a pair of shameless bitches, Wei Shenjin secretly sneered. Seeing that the 2 women were immersed in studying the medicine for a while, he took the initiative to suggest, you won't be able to tell just by looking at it. Whether it's good or not, you'll only know after you use it. Then why don't you hurry up? Situ Qian couldn't wait to take off her clothes. Little Qiuhua also followed her to the bed and kept urging Wei Shenjin to hurry up. Wei Shenjin secretly smiled. Then, he endured the nausea and walked over. After the 3 of them took the first packet of medicine, as Linyi had said before, they were much more satisfied than ever before. Even Situ Qian and little Qiuhua, who were insatiable women, felt a little overwhelmed. They were simply as happy as gods. Afterwards, the 2 women even felt that they had lived for so many years in vain. Even those expensive livening medicines in the Central Chamber of Commerce could not be compared to such a miraculous medicine. In front of such a miraculous medicine, those could only be regarded as a pile of shit at most. Having tasted such sweetness, of course, with Situ Qian and little Qiuhua's licentious nature, it was impossible for them to give up. Early the next morning, before Wei Shenjin woke up, Situ Qian pushed Wei Shenjin and asked him to get up and do it again. However, Wei Shenjin said in a daze, I can't, Qianer. Senior brother is too tired to get up. Chapter 4158. Useless thing. Situ Qian couldn't hold back her anger. She cursed under her breath and sneaked out with the second packet of medicine with little Chihuahua. Naturally, this scene fell into the eyes of Wei Shinjin, who was pretending to be lazy, and his lips curled up in a mocking smile. Bustling really was a genius at scheming. Up until now, everything was going according to his script, and there was no deviation at all. Situ Qian, little Chihuahua, and Ma Shangfeng. The death of you three is finally coming. Situ Qian and little Chihuahua, who had no idea what was going on, found Ma Shangfeng excitedly and began to make love to him. In their opinion, Ma Shangfeng was already very strong in that aspect, and after taking this magical medicine, he would definitely be far better than a cripple like Wei Shinjin. Today was going to be a good day. Sure enough, after taking the second packet of medicine, the three of them immediately felt it. The excitement that made their faces blush and their hearts beat faster was obviously much stronger than last night. Situ Qian and little Chihuahua didn't notice anything wrong at all. Instead, they were overjoyed. On the other hand, Ma Shangfeng's reaction at this moment was even worse than the two women. His heart was beating violently, and the blood in his body was burning as if it was about to explode. The last trace of clarity in his mind was instantly drowned, and he instinctively wanted to vent as soon as possible. At the beginning, Ma Shangfeng's strong performance really gave the two women a taste of an unprecedented wonderful feeling. However, just as they were about to climb to the peak, Ma Shangfeng's body suddenly stiffened, and then he suddenly stopped moving and fell straight to the ground. Senior brother Ma, what are you waiting for? Hurry up. Situ Qian complained discontentedly. However, when little Chihuahua saw Ma Shangfeng's current appearance, her eyes suddenly widened, and she was so scared that she stuttered, Miss, Senior brother Ma, he what? Situ Qian frowned and turned her head. After taking a look, she was also shocked. Ma Shangfeng's entire body curled into a ball like a cooked prawn. His expression was hideous and twitching, and he was foaming at the mouth. It seemed that he was exhaling more than he was inhaling. In just a short moment, Ma Shangfeng had completely stopped moving, and he had become a lifeless corpse. He died just like that? Situ Qian's head was spinning, and her mind was completely blank. She never would have thought that something like this would happen during the most enjoyable moment. Miss, what should we do? Little Chihuahua's face turned ashen. No matter what, Ma Shangfeng was an early-stage gold core realm expert. If he died like this, then the higher-ups of the sect would definitely come to the bottom of this matter. At that time, they would be finished. Situ Qian had Situ Guangzong as her grandfather. At most, she would only lose face and be gossiped about. However, as a little maid with no status, she might become a scapegoat. No, we have to get rid of the evidence. We have to find a way to get rid of the body. Situ Qian gritted her teeth and said, if this matter was spread out, it would be a huge scandal. Even if she did not die, she would not be able to escape punishment. Yes. Little Chihuahua nodded repeatedly and immediately got out of bed. It would be best for her if she could muddle through this matter quietly. However, before the two of them could put on their clothes, they suddenly felt wave after wave of strong impulses surging through their bodies. That indescribable sense of excitement rushed straight to their scalps, and they simply could not stop. This time, not to mention getting rid of the body, the two of them could not even stand steadily. The surging impulses in their bodies were completely out of control, rushing straight to their brains and scalps. The last bit of reason they had was swallowed up. They were like travelers trapped in the desert, crazily wanting to quench their thirst. However, the thing that could quench their thirst was not water, but men. Under the urge of the tide, the two of them could no longer care about Ma Shangfeng. They immediately rushed out of the room in a disheveled manner. At that moment, there was only one voice left in their minds, man. I want a man. The commotion caused by the two of them attracted the attention of a passing Snow Sword School disciple. It just so happened that he was a male. When he saw the two of them in a disheveled state, he was immediately startled. However, before he could react, the two of them had already pounced on him like wolves and tigers. Without saying anything, they stripped him naked and tried to force themselves on him. This damned scene really made the male disciple dumbfounded. Of course, He knew what kind of person Situ Qian was. Not only did she have a noble status, but she also had a good appearance. Coupled with her mannerisms, she was often talked about by the male disciples. However, he did not expect that he would encounter such an encounter today. As a man, he was actually being pushed down by Situ Qian and little Qiuhua. However, even if he usually fantasized about this, at this moment, it had happened so suddenly. Furthermore, Situ Qian and little Qiuhua looked too abnormal. The first reaction of the male disciple was not to enjoy it, but to escape. However, Situ Qian and little Qiuhua were currently bathed in fire. It was like a drowning man grasping at the last life-saving straw. How could they let him go so easily? The two of them forcefully pressed him down and poured some of the second packet of medicine that they had not used before into his mouth. In the blink of an eye, the male disciple also became vigorous like a dragon and fierce like a tiger. Instead of running away, he took the initiative to mess with the two of them. However, after a while, the male disciple suddenly foamed at the mouth. His body twitched and he fell to the ground. He followed in Ma Shangfeng's footsteps and died. This time, Situ Qian and little Qiuhua did not know what fear was. Seeing that the male disciple could no longer satisfy them, they immediately threw away the corpse and went to find someone else. They randomly grabbed a passing disciple, dragged him over, and fed him medicine. Then, like hungry tigers, they pounced on sheep. In less than an hour, the two of them had used this method to trap 4 male disciples to death. However, the surging desire in their bodies did not lessen at all. Instead, it became even crazier. This time, the matter was completely blown out of proportion. The news of Situ Qian and little Qiuhua madly grabbing male disciples to have sex with them spread like wildfire. Very soon, the entire Snow Sword School knew about it. This was an unprecedented rare event. Hearing the news, the Snow Sword School's disciples all gathered around to watch. When the higher-ups of the school learned about this, the Snow Sword School's disciples who were gathered around to watch the fun were already packed to the brim. At first, Situ Guangzong did not believe it. It was only when he saw Situ Qian and little Qiuhua naked on top of a male disciple, moaning shamelessly, did he finally accept the reality, and he almost fainted. R1152. Chapter 4159. The upper echelons of the Snow Sword sect, including Wei Feng, were shocked speechless for a long time upon seeing this explosive scene. They exchanged glances with each other. Only one thing was clear in their minds. Were these two women crazy? Situ Qian, what are you doing? Situ Guangzong was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged as he roared in anger. The prestige he had painstakingly accumulated as an elder for so many years was completely destroyed by this lunatic Situ Qian. In the future, when the other disciples saw him, they would no longer be in awe. Instead, they would point at him and talk about what happened today, talking about the scandal of the Situ family. Thinking of this, Situ Guangzong even wanted to strangle his own granddaughter to death on the spot. Hearing Situ Guangzong's sudden roar, Situ Qian and little Qiuhua, who were immersed in an endless sea of desire, finally regained a bit of consciousness. Turning their heads to look at Situ Guangzong, who was about to swallow the two of them alive, they were instantly shocked. Then, their hearts uncontrollably contracted. Bang! The two women's exposed chests exploded at the same time, blood splattering everywhere. It was a ghastly sight. In front of everyone's eyes, their hearts exploded and they died. For a moment, everyone was silent, including Situ Guangzong. No one could have imagined that the two women would die so suddenly and directly. Following that, everyone's gazes focused on Situ Guangzong. Today's matter could not be said to be small. Starting from Ma Shangfeng, all the way to the sudden deaths of the two girls, a total of 8 people had died. This was an unprecedented event. Especially with Situ Qian and little Qiuhua's licentious behavior, the impact was extremely bad. This was not only a scandal of the Situ family. Once it was spread out, it would tarnish the reputation of the entire Snow Sword sect, and even make them the laughingstock of the entire island. The consequences would be unimaginable. Investigate. Investigate thoroughly for this old man. Why did this happen? Situ Guangzong fiercely ordered through gritted teeth. He was the elder with the highest status here, and Situ Qian was his granddaughter. She had the greatest influence on him, and he was also the most eager to know the truth. Although Situ Qian made him lose face, anyone with a discerning eye could see that the reason why she became so bold and shameless was obviously because she had taken some medicine. There might be some other reason behind it. Situ Guangzong could only hope that this was the case. This was a matter of great importance. They had to find out the truth as soon as possible and quell the rumors. Only then would there be a chance to reduce the impact. The Snow Sword faction's most elite enforcers were immediately dispatched. The first one to be investigated was naturally Situ Qian's real husband, Wei Shenjin. Wei Shenjin was already prepared for this. He immediately told them about Situ Qian and Ma Shangfeng's adultery. When the news spread, the entire Snow Sword faction was in an uproar. Ma Shangfeng's body lay there. Moreover, Situ Qian and little Qiuhua's performance was obvious to all. Therefore, Wei Shenjin's statement was quickly accepted by everyone. Not only did she commit adultery, but she also didn't even let bystanders off. He committed lewd acts in public until he was too excited and finally died. In an instant, Situ Qian, who had already been the talk of the town, became the talk of the town. In the public's opinion, she became a slut who could sleep with anyone. She could even be recorded in the history of the heavenly stage island as a typical slut since ancient times. Regarding this, Situ Guangzong couldn't refute it. As her grandfather, he more or less knew about Situ Qian's temperament. Her adultery with Ma Shangfeng had also been found out. It was impossible for him to distort the truth. However, if the case was closed according to this statement, the impact on the Situ family would be too great. They might even be nailed to the pillar of shame for generations to come. Their Situ family couldn't afford to bear this infamy. Wei Shenjin, you said that Situ Qian and Ma Shangfeng committed adultery. This old man won't comment on this matter for now. However, the reason why she acted so crazily and strangely today was obviously because she overdosed. This was your doing, right? Situ Guangzong forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and coldly rebuked Wei Shenjin. Situ Qian was a ruthless person. This was something he couldn't change. The only thing he could do now was to divert everyone's attention to Wei Shenjin's killing. This way, the Situ family would at least be less affected. Elder Situ, are you saying that I plan to drug her and cause the deaths of Situ Qian and Ma Shangfeng? Wei Shenjin asked in front of everyone. You harbored hatred in your heart, so it's reasonable for you to do such a thing. It's not that this old man can't empathize with you. As long as you confess, this old man can consider giving you a lighter punishment. I can even give you some compensation so that you can live the rest of your life in peace. I hope you can think this through before you speak. Situ Guangzong said, half threatening and half tempting. He didn't have any intention of doing anything to Wei Shenjin, nor did he have any intention of avenging Situ Qian. The only thing he wanted to do was to minimize the impact of this incident. Elder Situ, I will not admit to a groundless accusation. It is as you said, after I found out that she committed adultery with Ma Shangfeng, I did have the intention of killing her to vent my anger. Unfortunately, I am now a cripple and don't have the strength to do so. I can't even use my Spirit Jade card. So where would I get the Spirit Jades to buy her medicine? Wei Shenjin smiled bitterly. Situ Guangzong was speechless. Wei Shenjin was speaking the truth. Buying medicine required Spirit Jades. A cripple like him couldn't even use a Spirit Jade card, and he couldn't possibly carry a sack of Spirit Jades out of the house. That would be too obvious and would definitely leave an impression on others. Why don't you go to my house and check it out? Just take a look at Situ Qian's dressing room. Inside are all the things she bought. I believe it will be an eye-opener for you. Wei Shenjin coldly laughed. He used to be very afraid of Situ Guangzong, an elder with real power. But after interacting with Lin Yi, he suddenly realized that these so-called big shots were only SOSO. Sooner or later, they would be stepped on by him. Hearing this, Situ Guangzong's face became extremely ugly. But when the enforcer returned from Wei Shenjin's house, his face became even uglier. The dressing room is filled with filthy things used to liven things up. There are also quite a few medicines for both men and women. They are all from the Central Chamber of Commerce and are not cheap, the enforcer reported. This time, Situ Guangzong was completely speechless. The Central Chamber of Commerce's items were famous for being expensive. Wei Shenjin was a cripple and couldn't use his Spirit Jade card, so naturally, he couldn't afford these medicines. In the end, he could only conclude that Situ Qian, that bitch, had reaped what she sowed and killed herself. All right, I understand. You guys do as you see fit. Situ Guangzong coldly glared at Wei Shenjin and angrily stormed off. From his eyes, it could be seen that he didn't know what was good for him. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4160. Seeing the situation, Wei Feng walked over to remind him, "Why bother? You were just going through the motions with him. You won't suffer any substantial losses. Why do you have to bear a grudge against him for no reason? You have to be careful in the future." Although Wei Shenjin was one of his people, he was currently a cripple. If Situ Guangzong really wanted to find fault with him, just a casual word from him would be enough to send him to his death. It was impossible for him to go against a powerful elder for the sake of a cripple. At that time, Wei Shenjin could only pray for his own good fortune. Thank you for the reminder, Uncle Feng. However, I'll say it again. Since it's not my fault, why should I take it? Wei Shenjin smiled calmly. If he was really a cripple, he might really drag out an ignoble existence. However, the situation now was different. Then you're on your own. Wei Feng helplessly patted his shoulder, shook his head, and left with a sigh. He then began to ponder whether he should completely give up on Wei Shenjin. However, in just a few short days, before he could completely make up his mind, a shocking piece of news suddenly came. Wei Shenjin's meridians had been repaired by someone. However, what was even more shocking was the meaning behind it. Wei Shenjin's meridians had been personally repaired by the Vice Island Master of the Middle Island, the Will of Heaven. This was quite interesting. At the level of the Will of Heaven, every action of his had a profound meaning. Even if he did not have it himself, with so many people watching, they would take the initiative to interpret it for him. For a moment, the entire Snow Sword School looked at Wei Shenjin in a completely different way than before. First, his meridians were crippled. Then, he was cuckolded by Situ Qian. Just as he was about to reach the lowest point of his life, he suddenly changed. Not only did he completely recover from his injuries, he even formed a relationship with a top figure like the Will of Heaven. Wei Shenjin's experience was like a roller coaster, full of ups and downs. Leaving aside the private discussions of the crowd, the reactions of the upper echelon of the Snow Sword faction were surprisingly unanimous. They restored Wei Shenjin's status and treatment as a core disciple. At the same time, they gave up on the arrest of Wu Fu Lingyi. This decision had been made by the sect master on the spot, and many of the elders had unanimously approved of it. Even Situ Guangzong, who harbored hatred in his heart, could only maintain his silence, not daring to say anything to stop it. Wei Shenjin was a core disciple. Now that he had recovered from his injuries and regained his identity, it was a matter of course. As for giving up on the arrest of Wu Fu Lingyi, it was to express goodwill to the Vice Island Master of the Middle Island, the Will of Heaven. Rushing to the Tiandan Pavilion, Wei Shenjin reported the decision of the higher-ups to Lin Yi. In the end, he could not help but add a sigh. Everything is under control. Boss Lin Yi is really a godly person. Seeking benefits and avoiding harm is human nature. When you reach the level of a sect leader, face is just a price. In the face of substantial benefits, you can cast it aside at any time, Lin Yi said with a smile. Boss, that's because you have a good foresight. Without your help, my current situation would be unimaginable. It's very likely that I would have been a corpse. I couldn't even kill that bitch Situ Qian, let alone regain my strength and identity. I will never forget your great kindness. After saying that, Wei Shenjin bowed to Lin Yi 3 times respectfully, expressing his sincere gratitude. You don't have to do that. Since the matter here has been settled, I'm going to leave for the North Island in these 2 days. You should also pay attention to the Tiandan Pavilion in the future. Although there won't be any trouble with Big Brother the Will of Heaven, if it's just some small fries who don't know what to do, We can't let the dignified deputy island master of Zhongdao solve the problem. Besides, Tianshan and Sydney are women, so it's not convenient for them to show up in public. So, we need you to take care of them, Linny ordered. He only had a few friends here. In addition to the will of heaven, there were Kai Zhongyang and Hou Guanqi. Both of them were busy people. It was obviously unrealistic to ask them to hang around in the Tiandan Pavilion every day. So, this task could only fall on Wei Shenjin. Boss Linny, don't worry. It just so happens that the sect leader asked me to walk around in the Tiandan Pavilion more often. I promise that I'll come here every day. If anyone dares to make trouble, I'll kill him, Wei Shenjin said with a murderous look. The strength of the early stage of Gold Core Realm was not very powerful in Zhongdao, but he had the Snow Sword faction and the will of heaven behind him, so he was naturally confident and fearless. Welcome to the Murloc public account, Weixin Yuan 22. The Murloc will publish the latest news on it. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4161. Then I'll have to trouble you, said Lin Yi with a smile and a nod. The Snow Sword faction had given up on Wu Fu Ling Yi's arrest order and turned to the Tiandan Pavilion. This was not a secret. If someone were to investigate, they would be able to find out everything. Most of the people in the know were just there to watch the show and discuss it after a meal. However, when Nantian Aurora and the others heard the news, they exploded in anger on the spot. What the hell is this Snow Sword faction doing? We lowered ourselves to provide them with information, but not only did they not deal with Lin Yi, they actually turned around and got along with Lin Yi. They're simply a bunch of despicable people. We've spent so much effort to design this for nothing, said Si Haishao indignantly. That's right, Dean Nantian. They're not taking you seriously at all. The will of heaven behind Lin Yi isn't easy to deal with, but do you think we're easy to deal with? How preposterous. Patriarch Xinshin was similarly furious. He did not forget to provoke them with his words. These damned bastards. Nantian Aurora's face was as gloomy as water. The fact that he was killed by the will of heaven in one move previously was enough to make him unable to raise his head. He was just deliberately not thinking about it. However, the Snow Sword faction's actions were clearly a slap to his face. If the current Vice Island Master of Middle Island was him instead of the will of heaven, even if the Snow Sword faction had the guts, they would not dare to do this. Old friend Nantian, what should we do now? Should we go to the Snow Sword faction and trample on them? Let's see if they still dare to look down on us in the future, suggested Si Haishao. Nantian Aurora was moved. He could not swallow this anger. However, after a slight hesitation, the remaining bit of reason made him dispel this idea. He had the backing of the Cultivator Academy and the Central Chamber of Commerce. Furthermore, he was one of the few early-stage profound ascension experts of Middle Island. He indeed had enough confidence to face a mere Snow Sword faction. However, he had joined the center with a secret identity. Even if things got out of hand, it would not be good for the center to stand up for him. In fact, he might even be punished instead. Forget it. I'll become enemies with the entire Snow Sword School. The impact of this matter is too great, and it might even affect the plans of the higher-ups. We can't act rashly. What I'm having a headache over right now isn't this, but Lin Yi. Nantian Aurora rubbed his temples in distress. When Si Haishao and Patriarch Xinshin heard this, they could not help but fall silent. Lin Yi might return to the North Island at any time. In the end, they did not even have the chance to borrow the saber's shadow. The previous plan of killing with a borrowed knife was simply a joke. Since the Snow Sword School can't do it, let's go. Why don't we go to another restaurant? Patriarch Black Earth suggested. Which one? Linny has only been in Middle Island for a short period of time. There aren't many people who know his name, and even fewer who have conflicts with him. What's more, he's backed by the will of heaven. Unless there's a life-and-death blood feud, who would provoke him? Si Haishao said helplessly. Then what should we do? We can't just let that brat Linny go like this, right? Patriarch Black Earth was also helpless, but he still said unwillingly, looks like we can only ask for instructions from the higher-ups. If the higher-ups agree, even if we personally kill that brat Lin Yi, We won't have to worry about the threat of the will of heaven, Nantion Aurora decided. Si Haishao and Patriarch Black Earth looked at each other and nodded in agreement. After all, there was no other good plan they could think of at the moment. The three of them immediately set off for the Central Chamber of Commerce to meet that mysterious black-clothed man and tell him the ins and outs of the matter. They waited for the mysterious man to make a decision, but the mysterious man's words shocked the three of them. That Linny, you guys don't touch him for now. I've been paying attention to this person for a long time, and he's also on the list of people I want to rope in, the mysterious man said lightly. Nantion Aurora and the other two looked at each other and were instantly speechless. Although they were extremely unwilling, they didn't dare to have any objections. They could only nod and agree. Feeling helpless, the three of them broke out in a cold sweat in unison. Even if they were beaten to death, they would never have imagined that even their immediate superior, the mysterious man, would actually think so highly of Lin Yi. Fortunately, they didn't rush to make a move. Otherwise, if they really disregarded everything and killed Lin Yi, which would ruin the mysterious man's plan, they would really be in big trouble. Nantion Aurora and the other two could only give up on the matter of dealing with Lin Yi. As for Si Haishao, he could only return to the North Island gloomily. His main mission in coming to Middle Island this time was to rope in Nantion Aurora. As for dealing with Lin Yi, that was just an idea that came to him after he accidentally discovered it. Now that Nantion Aurora had already joined the center, and the higher-ups didn't allow them to touch Lin Yi, there was nothing for them to do even if they continued to stay in Middle Island, so they could only return home. Even so, he was still very unwilling in his heart. Back then, he suffered great humiliation in front of Lin Yi. Not only did he lose all his face, but he was even beaten up so badly that he almost reported to the King of Hell. It could be said that there was a deep hatred between them, but now, the higher-ups didn't allow him to touch Lin Yi. How could he accept that? However, Si Haishao had never been a person who knew his place. Since he had made up his mind to deal with Lin Yi, then no one could stop him. Even if he didn't dare to make a move openly because of the mysterious man's despotic power, if he only wanted to sow discord in the dark, there shouldn't be any risk in letting someone else do it for him. Lin Yi didn't have many enemies in Middle Island, but in North Island, he definitely had a lot of enemies. Even the mysterious man couldn't stop these people from trying to kill him. His hard work paid off. As soon as Si Haishao returned to the North Island, he found a godsend opportunity. The North Island was now full of wanted posters, and the image of Wu Fu Lingyi was depicted on them. Wonderful, really wonderful. Just when I was about to doze off, someone came to give me a pillow. This time, it's Lin Yi who's courting death. Then, don't blame me for adding fuel to the fire. Who asked you to be so inhumane and make enemies everywhere? Hee. Si Haishao was instantly overjoyed. Wu Fu Lingyi had a brand new image, and probably no one in North Island knew that this was Lin Yi's disguise. As long as this news was spread outside without a trace, when Lin Yi came back, even if he didn't die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. Even the mysterious man couldn't blame it on Si Haishao. Si Haishao immediately took the arrest warrant with a big smile and read it carefully. After understanding the cause and effect, he couldn't help but laugh even more happily. In North Island, only Law Enforcement Hall was qualified to issue arrest warrants. And this time, Wu Fu Lingyi was wanted for killing Su Zhaohu, a disciple of Rising Sky Pavilion. Si Haishao didn't say anything. After deliberately hiding it from others, he went straight to Law Enforcement Hall. Nowadays, the Central Chamber of Commerce had become famous on all the major islands of Heaven stage, and its momentum was so great that it was almost as powerful as top chambers of commerce such as Five Elements Commerce and Hong Chamber of Commerce. As the manager of North Island's branch on the surface, Si Haishao was also considered a top figure in North Island. When he came to Law Enforcement Hall, a place with strict hierarchy, naturally, someone came to receive him. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4162. However, due to his drunken teasing of Shangguan Laner and Ning Shuefei, even if Si Haishao wasn't directly blacklisted by the three great pavilions, he was still very unpopular. Normally, It should have been the higher-ups of the law enforcement hall who came out to receive him, but this time, it was just an ordinary law enforcement envoy. This law enforcer was none other than Yo Chong. Back then, his sworn brother Ma Jian had been imprisoned for abusing his position to avenge a personal grudge. Now, he had been tortured to death. However, he had managed to escape this calamity and was not implicated. This time, the case of Wu Fuling Yi was under his charge. So it's Shopkeeper C of the Central Chamber of Commerce. It's an honor to meet you. I am Law Enforcement Envoy Niu Chong. Niu Chong recognized Si Haishao at a glance and hurriedly greeted him. His backer Su Lingchong was missing, and his sworn brother Ma Jian was imprisoned and killed. During this period of time, he had been living with his tail between his legs, not daring to offend anyone. He was afraid that he would follow in Ma Jian's footsteps. Now, it was rare to see a powerful figure. Even if it was Si Haishao, who was not favored by the three great pavilions, he had to find an opportunity to curry favor. Who knows, he might have another way out in the future. Oh, it's Law Enforcement Envoy Niu. I heard that you're handling Wu Fu Lingyi's case? Si Haishao looked him up and down and asked. That's right, it's me. May I know what advice does Shopkeeper C have? Niu Chong nodded and replied calmly. It can't be said to be advice, but I have a lead on that Wu Fu Ling Yi. Si Haishao smiled mysteriously. Really? Niu Chong's eyes suddenly lit up. The arrest warrant had been issued for some time, but there was still no news. It was as if Wu Fu Ling Yi did not exist. He was worried about this matter, but he did not expect Si Haishao to actually come to him with information. Coming here specifically to deal with Lin Yi, Si Haishao did not hide anything and told him what he found on Central Island, making Niu Chong burst with joy. So Wu Fu Ling Yi is Lin Yi in disguise. That's great. I'll apply for manpower from the higher-ups right away to arrest and bring him to justice. Niu Chong could not contain his excitement as he said. To put it bluntly, Ma Jian's death was caused by Lin Yi. Now that he had this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, he could avenge his sworn brother's death and at the same time, he could use this opportunity to claim credit from one of the most powerful figures in Soaring Sky Pavilion. This was killing two birds with one stone. Don't worry. Right now, Lin Yi is still in Middle Island and hasn't returned. Don't let out any news so that he can make preparations. This is a rare opportunity. We must make it an ironclad case. Kill him in one move, and don't give him any chance to turn things around. Si Haishao reminded from the side. An ironclad case? Hearing that, Niu Chong's expression froze slightly, and he said awkwardly, that's a little difficult. He killed Su Zhaohu in the boundary of Hucai Tianwu Mountain, which is not within the scope of the North Island. Strictly speaking, I've overstepped my authority by issuing an arrest warrant for him, and it's all because of Brother Su. The others turned a blind eye and didn't ask about it. Brother Su? Who's that? Si Haishao couldn't help but be stunned. It's Su Zhaohe, the most popular young genius disciple in Soaring Sky Pavilion, who is about to be accepted by Pavilion Master Shangwan. Originally, his cousin Su Zhaohu was killed in the North Island. Normal procedures wouldn't have opened a case. It was because of him that I took this task, Niu Chong explained. Now that Su Lingchong was missing, he was in a hurry to find a new backer. Coincidentally, he met a genius like Su Zhaohe, who had a promising future. Naturally, he would seize the opportunity to curry favor. Once he did this task well, in the future, he would be able to get in touch with Su Zhaohe. Everyone knew about the relationship between the hall master of the law enforcement hall, Gong Yangjie, and Shangguan Tianhua. Furthermore, Su Zhaohe was Shangguan Tianhua's disciple, and once he succeeded in becoming Shangguan Tianhua's disciple, he and Gong Yangjie would become fellow disciples. If Niu Chong was able to climb up to such a powerful backer, it would definitely be a great benefit to him. So, the arrest warrant for Wu Fu Ling Yi is just to sell a favor, and this matter really can't be settled? Si Haishao couldn't help but frown. Exactly. If we have to do it by force, I'm afraid it'll be difficult. The only thing I can do now is to first capture Lin Yi and then let the higher-ups decide, Niu Chong said helplessly. When he thought of Lin Yi, he couldn't help but think of his close brother Ma Jian. Ma Jian died tragically because he wanted to deal with Lin Yi. If he used public office to take revenge, He was afraid that he would follow in Ma Jian's footsteps, and the consequences would be unimaginable. In that case, why don't we simply not go through the official channel? There are too many restrictions, and I heard that Shanghai Tianhua is good to Lin Yi. If it really gets out of hand, even if we capture Lin Yi, we won't be able to kill him. It's safer to go through private channels, Si Haishao said while rolling his eyes. Private channels? What do you mean? Niu Chong was confused. Isn't it simple? Si Haishao looked at him and thought that this person was really stupid. He patiently reminded, "Why did you do this case? Isn't it just to sell a favor to Su Zhaohe? If you tell him about Lin Yi's identity, what do you think he will do? Brother Su will definitely make a move on Lin Yi. He's currently at the peak of his power, and Lin Yi killed his cousin. How can he tolerate it? Even if he wants to swallow it, when the news gets out, others will definitely say that he's weak. It might even affect his apprenticeship. If that happens, he won't be able to not settle things with Lin Yi." Niu Chong's eyes suddenly lit up as he said excitedly, "So, you tell him the information and bring him to Lin Yi. All you need to do now is to watch the show." For Su Zhaohe to be chosen by someone like Shanghai Tianhua, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he's the strongest foundation establishment expert. At that time, he'll definitely be able to kill Lin Yi easily. Si Haishao laughed sinisterly. In his eyes, Su Zhaohe had already become a sharp knife, and it just so happened to be aimed at Lin Yi. The only thing he had to do now was to encourage Niu Chong to move Su Zhaohe's blade closer to Lin Yi's neck. That was all. Unfortunately, he still didn't know Lin Yi's strength. He took it for granted that Lin Yi was definitely still in the foundation establishment realm. Back then, Wei Shenjin was injured because he was sneak attacked by Lin Yi from behind. That didn't count at all. Little did he know that Lin Yi was an extraordinary person. How could he be judged by common sense? Su Zhaohe was the so-called strongest foundation establishment expert's blade. Even if Lin Yi took the initiative to approach, he still wouldn't be able to cut it. Good idea. Manager C is indeed brilliant. Niu Chong nodded repeatedly as he listened. This way, he wouldn't have to risk breaking the rules, and at the same time, he could curry favor with Su Zhaohe. Moreover, he could take the opportunity to kill Lin Yi. It was simply killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Chapter 4163. This time, he chose to return to the North Island by flying Spirit Beast. Compared with the land and sea routes, flying Spirit Beast was obviously much faster, but at the cost of more risks. Crossing the vast sea, not only did he have to be on guard against the fierce birds in the sky at all times, but he also had to be careful of sneak attacks from sea beasts. In addition, the journey was long, and ordinary flying spirit beasts could not sustain such a high-intensity long-distance flight. 60 to 60% of them died halfway. Therefore, even if most people chose to ride flying spirit beasts, they did not dare to cross the vast sea. Instead, they avoided the sea and took a detour along the land route to ensure their safety. However, this time, Lin Yi rode the will of heaven's exclusive mount, so he had no such concerns. Not only were the flying spirit beasts terrifyingly powerful, but the special symbol on their bodies, especially the dazzling words Island Master Pavilion of Middle Island, was enough to scare off 99% of cultivators and spirit beasts. If they attacked it, it was equivalent to going against the Island Master Pavilion of Middle Island. Not to mention cultivators, even spirit beasts did not have the guts to do so. Their IQ was not much lower than that of humans. Even if the vast sea had never been conquered by humans, they still knew what the Island Master Pavilion of Middle Island represented. There was no wind and no waves along the way. After only 2 days and nights, with the extraordinary speed of the flying spirit beast, the will of heaven, Lin Yi returned to the familiar North Island area. Watching the flying spirit beast leave, Lin Yi had just returned to the welcome pavilion. Before he had time to say a few words to senior brother Ku Bai and the others, a big event happened. Su Zhaohe and Niu Chong came to the door. It was rumored that Su Zhaohe's apprentice to Shanghai Tianhua was a foregone conclusion. Therefore, Su Zhaohe's status in the 3 pavilions of the North Island was like the sun at noon. As soon as he appeared, he attracted a large number of new disciples in the welcome pavilion. You're Lin Yi? After hiding like a tortoise for so long, you're finally willing to come back. It just so happens that I want to challenge you to a battle in front of everyone. Do you dare to accept? Su Zhaohe said in a clear voice with a disdainful expression. Lin Yi didn't know that he was also wanted on the wanted list in the North Island. When he suddenly encountered such a thing, he was totally confused. Looking at this man's broad face, he had his own aura and seemed to be a big shot. Who are you? Lin Yi couldn't help but frown and ask casually. Holy shit. As soon as Lin Yi said this, the audience suddenly burst into an uproar. A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow. Nowadays, who in the 3 pavilions of the North Island did not know Su Zhaohe? Did this guy really not know her, or was he pretending not to know her? The group of new disciples in the Welcome Pavilion could not help but look at each other. This guy had disappeared for so long. They didn't expect that as soon as he came back, he would habitually show off again. Everyone was just watching the show, but Su Zhaohe's face was flushed at the moment. During this period, he had long been used to being surrounded by stars. When had he ever been looked down upon like this in front of him? Moreover, the other party was just a disciple of the Welcome Pavilion. Under normal circumstances, he would not even bother to look at him. I am Su Zhaohe of Rising Sky Pavilion. Under everyone's gaze, Su Zhaohe replied with a stiff expression and gritted teeth. Su Zhaohe? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. Why did this guy suddenly come to him? Then he said, I don't think I've seen you before. Why did you challenge me? Humph, you haven't seen me before, but you've seen my cousin Su Zhaohe, right? Lin Yi? Oh no, or should I call you Ling Yi? Su Zhaohe sneered and stared at him. When Lin Yi heard this, he immediately understood. However, at the same time, he was surprised. When he killed Su Zhaohe, he did look like Wu Fu Ling Yi. However, it happened in a place like Hucai Tian Wu Mountain, where no one went. How did it get exposed? At that time, other than Su Zhaohe and Chen Muzhuan who were already dead, there were only Huang Xiaodao and Cong Jima left. However, Lin Yi's eyes had always been very accurate. He believed that the two of them would not betray him. Could it be that intermediate golden elixir stage expert? Lin Yi's eyelids suddenly twitched. Although that guy did not see the whole process, after thinking about it, it was very likely that he had provided the clue. However, as for the identity of this person, Lin Yi had no way of knowing. He could only wait for the next time they met again. Only then would he have the opportunity to take revenge for what happened last time. He only has himself to blame. In a place like Hucai Tian Wu Mountain, since he wanted to rob people's things, he naturally had to be prepared to die. Lin Yi replied indifferently. The fact that he was Wu Fu Ling, he could be found out as long as he went to Middle Island to investigate. There was no way to deny it. Moreover, he had never thought of denying it. Only has himself to blame? Humph. Look at you. You seem to be very proud of yourself. Now that my cousin is a dead man, whether it is right or wrong, your words have the final say. There is no way to prove it. Su Zhaohe stared coldly at Lin Yi and said, Since you are talking to me about being prepared, then I will also talk to you about being prepared to die. Since you have the guts to kill people, you naturally have to be prepared to die. What do you say? So, you're determined to kill me? Lin Yi said indifferently. He turned his head and glanced around. At this time, the scene of hostility had attracted more and more onlookers. Even Lin Yi saw the figure of Sheng Highlaner in the distance. She was also rushing over here. What? Are you afraid? You don't dare to accept the challenge? Su Zhaohe saw this and immediately laughed contemptuously. He said disdainfully and mockingly, You are a disciple of the Welcome Pavilion. It doesn't matter if you refuse. It is nothing more than a loss of face. In the end, you can still keep your worthless life. That's good. It saves me the reputation of bullying newcomers. Without waiting for Lin Yi to speak, the surrounding people were already pointing at him. Although in terms of reputation and strength, they were not on the same level, Lin Yi was also a famous newcomer king in the Welcome Pavilion. If he admitted defeat in front of him, his reputation would be completely ruined. This time Lin Yi is finished. Senior brother Su Zhaohe is the strongest expert in the foundation establishment stage. I heard that he can even fight against a golden core stage expert. Yeah, I heard that Linny is a pretentious person. I just don't know if he will be hot-headed and die. The people nearby suddenly began to discuss. However, Linny never cared about these things. He squinted his eyes and looked at Su Zhaohe. The corner of his mouth slightly curved into a playful smile. Foundation establishment stage? With his current strength, if he really wanted to kill this powerful Su Zhaohe, it would be absolutely easy and pleasant. The only thing he needed to worry about was how to deal with the aftermath after he killed the other party. All right, since you have such a strong request, then I will reluctantly fulfill your wish. Lin Yi immediately nodded. Anyway, there were so many people watching. Since it was the other party who took the initiative to challenge a newcomer like him, it was the other party who was in the wrong. Even if he was killed, it should not be Lin Yi's fault. R1152. Chapter 4164. Everyone was in an uproar when they heard this. No matter how they looked at it, they didn't think that Lin Yi would be Su Zhaohe's opponent. Moreover, as a newcomer, it wasn't too shameful for him to refuse the challenge. They didn't expect this guy to agree. Asking Su Zhaohe, the strongest foundation establishment expert, to fight in the arena was clearly courting death. Lin Yi, the pretentious leader, had never died before. Very well, in 5 days, I'll see you in the North Island arena. Su Zhaohe was overjoyed. In fact, what he was most afraid of this time was that Lin Yi would refuse. If that happened, his trip would be in vain. He didn't expect this guy to really agree. He was really reckless. The so-called North Island Arena was a place specially set up by the 3 pavilions of the North Island to prevent disciples from fighting privately. It was specially designed for people to fight and compare skills. The purpose was to let them speak with their strength and solve their conflicts fairly. In this way, to a certain extent, dirty tricks could be avoided, and the conflict could be turned into an open one and controlled within a controllable range. Only when both sides agreed could they make an appointment to fight. Once on the arena, no one could blame the other for life or death. If one felt that he was not strong enough, he could refuse in person. At most, it would be a loss of face, but at least his life wouldn't be in danger. As you wish, Lin Yi said with a light smile. Then you're waiting to die. Su Zhaohe looked at Lin Yi's indifferent and pretentious look and couldn't help but feel disgusted. In his opinion, only a strong person like him could really stay calm in the face of danger. As for trash like Lin Yi, he only knew how to pretend. Pretend my ass. Su Zhaohe left with Niu Chong and the others, and the attracted onlookers, after pointing at Lin Yi and discussing, also dispersed, leaving only Lin Yi and his people. Junior brother Lin, Su Zhaohe is recognized as the strongest foundation establishment disciple in our 3 pavilions. I heard that he can even fight with masters in the gold core stage. This is really not a joke. How could you agree? After not seeing each other for a long time, the bitter senior brother didn't have the time to exchange pleasantries with Lin Yi and asked worriedly, "Boss, that Su Zhaohe has quite the reputation. For him to have such a great reputation, his strength is certainly not weak. Otherwise, Pavilion Master Shangwan wouldn't have taken a fancy to him. This battle will be quite dangerous." Xiaoran was also feeling somewhat worried. As for Qiao Hongkai, he had always idolized Lin Yi the most, but he didn't say anything this time. Instead, he exchanged a glance with Li Zhengming. His eyes were also filled with worry. In the face of everyone's worries and complaints, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a surge of warmth in his heart. After staying in Zhongdao for more than a month, he felt a little strange when he returned to the 3 pavilions of North Island. But now, he instantly found the feeling of home. We've known each other for so long. When have you ever seen me do something I'm not confident in? You'll know when the time comes. Lin Yi comforted them with a smile. The bitter senior brothers still wanted to say something, but they were interrupted by Laner, who suddenly came over. "Junior brother, when did you come back? Why didn't you find me?" "Just now. I didn't have time to rest, and then I got involved in this." Lin Yi shrugged helplessly and held the small curly bear as usual. Then he asked, "By the way, where's Ning Shuefei? Did she go back to West Island?" Yes. She's the little princess of West Island. She can't come out to play for too long. She went back more than half a month ago. Laner stuck out her tongue, then paused and said nervously, Junior brother, do you really decide to fight with that guy? Yes. Since I've accepted the challenge in person, I naturally have to fight in this arena. I can't break my promise and stand him up in front of so many people. Linny smiled faintly. But my grandfather once said that the guy is one of the best among the disciples of the three pavilions in terms of strength and potential. He's not simple. Laner had always been carefree, but this time she worried about Lin Yi, which was rare. Oh, even Pavilion Master Shangwan said so. Then I should have a good fight with him. Lin Yi's interest was piqued. Given Shangwan Tianhua's experience, someone who could receive such an evaluation from him couldn't possibly be some ordinary person with no power but fame. Oh, this is not a martial arts competition, but a life-and-death battle. If you're not careful, you'll really die. Junior brother, why are you still so careless? Laner stomped her feet in exasperation. Suddenly, she rolled her eyes and said, Forget it. I'll go talk to grandfather about this. With that, without waiting for Lin Yi to speak, Shanghai Laner directly turned and left. She did not even care about the little curly bear and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Returning to Hualan residence, Shanghai Laner went straight to the study. Seeing Shanghai Tianhua practicing calligraphy, she immediately rolled up her sleeves and took the initiative to help him grind. Say it. What's the matter? Shanghai Tianhua smiled without raising his head. The little girl took the initiative to help him grind. It was a rare opportunity for him to enjoy it once a year. Since she was so attentive for no reason, she must have a request. Hee, grandfather, are you going to accept a disciple recently? Is he called Su Zhaohe or something? Shanghai Laner giggled. She had never paid much attention to the outside world, but recently, the rumors of Su Zhaohe becoming a disciple had become more and more intense. It was difficult for her not to hear about it. Oh, even little Laner, you've heard the rumors outside? Shanghai Tianhua was a little surprised. He then said non-committally, It's just a rumor. I don't admit it, but I don't deny it either. What is this? Grandpa is playing with words again, cloudy and misty. Shanghai Laner pouted and said directly, That person called Su Zhaohe just went to the welcome pavilion to challenge little junior brother. Grandfather, don't you think you should do something about it? Lin Yi? Shanghai Tianhua stopped writing and raised his head in surprise. Su Zhaohe went to challenge Lin Yi? Did Lin Yi agree? I don't know what little junior brother was thinking, but he actually agreed. Shanghai Laner curled her lips helplessly. Hee, this little guy is a little interesting. Shanghai Tianhua immediately laughed. It's interesting. Su Zhaohe is simply bullying the weak. He's really shameless. Grandfather should have given him a good scolding, then made him apologize to junior brother and cancel the challenge. Shangguan Lan said angrily, That won't do. The challenge is between the two of them. Others can't intervene. Even if I'm the pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the North Island Master Pavilion Elder, I can't take the lead to break this rule. Since Lin Yi has agreed to the challenge, then he should prepare well. Shanghai Tianhua shook his head and said slowly, How can this be? Grandfather, don't you think this kind of challenge is not fair at all? Shanghai Laner said angrily after listening. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4165. Little Laner, the three pavilions of the North Island set the rules for the duel to be fair. If you think it's unfair, you can refuse. Since Lin Yi dared to nod and agree, then this duel is fair to him. Even if he loses, even if he pays with his life, he can't use this as an excuse for failure, Shanghai Tianhua said slowly. I don't care about this. Su Zhaohe bullied little junior brother. That's wrong. Grandpa, you're bad. You must have a way, you just don't want to help me. Shanghai Laner stomped her feet, turned around, and left angrily. Looking at Shanghai Laner's back as she left, Shanghai Tianhua stroked his beard helplessly. If he really wanted to stop this duel, he could just say something casually. The reason why he didn't agree to Shanghai Laner's request was not because he didn't want to break the rules, but because he wanted to take the opportunity to see Lin Yi's potential. Su Zhaohe was a good whetstone for Lin Yi at this stage. If Lin Yi didn't even have this confidence and rashly accepted the duel, then he wasn't worthy of little honor. In the Chamber of Commerce tea house in the North Island, Nantian Ba, Nantian Gate, and Kong Ming Ming gathered together to welcome Si Haishao, who had just returned from Middle Island. In terms of seniority, the Nantian brothers sat at the top of the table closest to Si Haishao, followed by Morong Zhen and Zhong Pingliang. As for Kong Xiaoming, he could only sit at the very end. He was almost pushed to the door. It couldn't be helped. No matter how much Su Lingchong valued him, it was all in the past. This was Si Haishao's circle. Everything revolved around Si Haishao. He, Kong Xiaoming, hadn't made any contributions in Si Haishao's eyes. Oh, by the way, Kong Ming Ming, I heard that you were the last disciple of Xinshin? Si Haishao noticed Kong Ming's unnatural expression and suddenly thought of ancestor Xinshin of Middle Island. That's right. Manager Si, how did you know? Kong Ming Ming was stunned. Although the matters of the mortal world were not secrets, and there was nothing that could not be seen, Pinliang, who was present at the scene, knew all about it. But the kid wouldn't be so talkative as to secretly report this to Si Haishao, would he? It was completely worthless. Heh, so it really is such a coincidence. To tell you the truth, your master, Xinshin, is currently on the Middle Island. Furthermore, he has joined the center with my old friend, Nan Tian. He's on the same side. He even asked me to take care of you before he came back, Si Haishao said with a smile. Master is on Middle Island? He even joined the center? That's great. Kong Xiaoming was overjoyed. To be honest, with his selfish nature, normally, he would not care about how the ancestor of the Xinshin world was doing. However, when he suddenly heard about the ancestor of the Xinshin world's whereabouts, he was delighted. There was no other reason. Since the ancestor of the Xinshin world could follow a big shot like Nantian Aurora, it meant that he should be doing well now. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the face to ask Si Haishao. For Kong Ming Ming, this was the sign of him finding a new backer. Although Si Haishao didn't say anything more for the time being, his attitude now made Kong Ming Ming feel different. But it was already enough to make Xiaoming feel different. Even if his seat didn't change, Xiaoming's back was much straighter, and he had more confidence. At least when he looked at Morong Zhen and Pinliang, he was no longer as inferior as before. A while ago on Middle Island, your master, my old friend, Nantian, and a few others. We planned to have the Snow Sword faction deal with Lin Yi. We were about to succeed, but we didn't expect to fail at the last moment. It's such a pity just thinking about it. Si Haishao sighed, but then he became spirited again and said, Luckily, Lin Yi asked for it himself and made countless enemies. I thought no one could deal with him, but I didn't expect Su Zhaohe to be waiting for him when he came back. With Su Zhaohe's strength, the arranged battle in 5 days will be Lin Yi's death. He brought this upon himself. Ha ha ha. I've sparred with Su Zhao once. This person is indeed unfathomable. No one in the Foundation establishment stage is his match. Lin Yi has really kicked an iron plate this time. Nan Tianmin nodded in agreement. He had occupied the position of the first senior brother in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion for several years, so he was well aware of the strength of the disciples of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. He was the one who had the most right to speak about Su Zhaohe's strength. However, Lin Yi has always been strange. I think we should find a chance to warn Su Zhaohe. This time, it's Lin Yi who asked for it himself. It's a heaven-sent chance to kill him fair and square. Don't fail miserably, Kong Ming Ming reminded. If it was in the past, he wouldn't have the right to say this, and no one would take it to heart. However, this time, Si Haishao nodded. That's right. That kid does have some skills. In less than a month, he was able to gain a firm foothold in Middle Island, which is filled with experts, and make a name for himself. He's definitely not someone that can be underestimated. If Su Zhaohe underestimates him and doesn't put him in his eyes, there might really be a possibility of him failing miserably. Si Haishao agreed. Since Si Haishao had already said so, even if Nantianba and Southern Skygate didn't agree, they wouldn't say anything against it. They immediately went to find Su Zhaohe. Regarding the sudden visit of Si Haishao and his group, even Su Zhaohe, who claimed to be a prospective disciple of Shanghai Tianhua, took the initiative to greet them. After all, among them were Si Haishao, the manager of the North Island of the Chamber of Commerce, and Nan Tianba and Southern Skygate. For any disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, their status was not light. "Why have you come to find me?" Su Zhaohe looked around at the crowd and slowly asked. 5 days from now, it will be the day of the battle between you and Lin Yi. We have come here specifically to warn you. Don't underestimate that kid just because he's a newcomer. Si Haishao sternly said. In one move, he killed Nan Tianyong, who was at the peak of the late Foundation establishment realm. Not long ago, he heavily injured a core disciple of the Snow Sword sect, Wei Shinjin, whose strength was at the early gold core stage. Although it was a sneak attack, you still can't let your guard down. Thank you for the reminder. However, even if you didn't advise me, I still wouldn't underestimate my opponent. Su Zhaohe smiled and lightly asked, That's right, that Lin Yi. I've heard rumors about him before. He's the #1 newcomer of your welcoming pavilion. I heard that you guys even gave him a nickname, Pretentious Leader? Chapter 4166. It doesn't matter. As long as you have the strength, it doesn't matter if you show off. Otherwise, you would be a real idiot. Do you know that when I was in the welcoming pavilion, I was also recognized as the #1 newcomer? Some people even called me the pretentious leader. As for seriously injuring an early-stage golden core master, I did it too, but he did it from the back, while I faced him head-on. Su Zhaohe's words revealed an unconcealable pride. To be honest, he hadn't been in the soaring pavilion for a long time, and his experience was still shallow. It was precisely because of these outstanding achievements that he was crowned as a genius and received the attention of a top boss like Shanghai Tianhua. These were all the reasons he was proud of. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Si Haishao, the outsider, Kong Mingming, Murong Zhan, and Zhong Pingliang were not elders of the 3 great pavilions. Naturally, they didn't know these old stories. Only the Nantian brothers, Nantian Ba and Nantian Gate, knew something about it. However, although he was shocked, Zhong Pingliang still didn't think much of it. Looking at Su Zhaohe's arrogant face, as if Boss Lin Yi was nothing compared to him, he didn't know that this was just a lie. Even if you, Su Zhaohe, really did beat up an early-stage golden core master, that was after you joined the soaring pavilion, right? Boss Lin was still a newbie who hadn't been promoted yet. How could you compare? If his strength had already reached such an astonishing level when he was still in the welcoming pavilion, able to challenge an expert in the beginning stage of the golden elixir realm, then Shangguan Tianhua would probably have rushed to take him in. Why would he wait until now? And you still don't know, right? Ha 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 ha. Actually, I have successfully formed my golden core and am an early-stage golden core master. Su Zhaohe laughed proudly. I have been hiding my strength and didn't reveal it to the public. I wanted to find a chance to show my strength and become a disciple of Pavilion Master Shangguan. That's great. Then the situation is really set this time. We've been worrying too much. Si Haishao and the others' eyes lit up, while Pingliang's expression changed. Things weren't looking good. From everyone's point of view, if Su Zhaohe was only at the Foundation establishment great perfection, then with Lin Yi's devilishness, there might really be a possibility of failure. However, Su Zhaohe was now an early-stage golden core expert. No matter how heaven-defying Lin Yi was, it was impossible for him to be his opponent. What kind of person was Su Zhaohe? He was someone who could enter the eyes of Shanghai Tianhua. He was a genius disciple who could challenge those of a higher level than him. How could an ordinary expert of the same level compare to him? Haha, Lin Yi had really kicked an iron plate this time. He had sent himself up to be a stepping stone for others to acknowledge him as his master. He really couldn't stop himself from courting death. Si Haishao and the others immediately dispersed happily. On the other side, Shanghai Laner came out of Hualan residence with a gloomy expression and found the welcoming pavilion. Chapter 4167. What's the matter? Meng Tong looked at them coldly. Maybe it was a psychological effect, or maybe it was the truth, but his temperament had become even weirder than before. If the feeling he gave people before was that he was reborn, then after such a long time, it was as if his personality had started to change. Zhong Pingliang couldn't help but twitch when he saw this. He mumbled to himself. He heard from Su Lingchong a long time ago that this guy ate the Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill. Could it be that the Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill was really that terrifying? It could actually make such an unsophisticated idiot become so twisted, sending chills down one's spine? Not only him, but Kong Ming and Murong Zhan couldn't help but look at each other. Right now, they couldn't see through Meng Tong's strength at all. They only felt that this guy was unfathomable and extremely dangerous. It's nothing, actually. You should have heard the news that Lin Yi is going to fight Su Zhaohe, right? Kong Ming calmed himself down. So what? Meng Tong's expression didn't change at all. The opponent is Su Zhaohe. Don't you think that Lin Yi is dead for sure this time? Kong Ming said excitedly, we just got some insider news. Su Zhaohe's strength isn't what everyone thinks it is, but the early stage of Golden Core. This time, Lin Yi won't be able to survive even if he had 10 lives. Waha! Early stage of Golden Core? Meng Tong's expression changed slightly, but quickly returned to normal. No one could tell what he was thinking. So, this time, Lin Yi is dead for sure. At that time, the group of people gathered under him will definitely scatter. We have to prepare early and take over his fence-sitters. When there are people under him, we can be more confident in the future, Kong Ming suggested with his eyes shining. That's right. This is the best chance to win people's hearts. Although they still have people like Ku Bai, Xiao Ran, and Xiao Hongkai on their side, Lin Yi is their backbone. Once he dies, people's hearts will definitely waver. This is a rare opportunity. Otherwise, if we wait until Ku Bai calms them down, it won't be easy for us to poach them. Murong Zhan agreed. If you want to poach me, go ahead. I'm not interested. Meng Tong was still expressionless. He had experienced so many setbacks and tribulations. In particular, he was tortured by the Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill twice a day. His level was no longer something that Kong Ming could compare with. Only people like Kong Ming would never forget about those fence-sitters, treating them as tools to achieve their ambitions. But now, Meng Tong didn't care about them at all. Ugh. Kong Ming froze. The reason why he invited Meng Tong was because of his influence among the Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers. Even if Lin Yi always stepped on him, he should still be a threat to the normal Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers. But to the average Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples, it should still have some degree of deterrence. But in the end, this guy actually said he wasn't interested. If this was in the past, Kong Ming would have scolded him a long time ago. But now, he couldn't see through Meng Tong at all. Even if he was dissatisfied, he could only hold it in for the time being. Why don't I give it a try? Pin Liang was the one who volunteered. I can try to get Li Jingming on our side. If I can get him to join us, I'll be able to get him to join us. I'm sure it'll be a great help to the other Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers. That's true, but that Li Jingming is different from the other newcomers. He's a determined person. He's not that easy to convince. I've talked to him a few times already, but nothing worked. Murong Zhan said bitterly. She had always been confident in her honey trap, but it didn't work on Lin Yi or Li Jingming. It was a huge blow to her. If it weren't for Si Haixiao, she would have suspected that she'd become an old woman. That's probably because he's too wary of you. Since Pin Liang volunteered, why don't you give it a try? Who knows, there might be unexpected results. Kong Ming nodded. But you don't have to rush to rope him in. You just need to get close to him and give him a hint. He's a smart man. I'm sure he'll know what to do when Lin Yi dies. I understand. Pin Liang smiled to himself and left the room. Volunteering to turn Li Jingming against him was, of course, just an excuse. The real purpose was to inform Lin Yi of Su Zhaohe's identity. Su Zhaohe was an early-stage Golden Core practitioner, and this was a huge hidden danger. If Lin Yi didn't know about this and started a war, he'd be at a huge disadvantage. At this critical moment, Lin Yi was the focus of all three pavilions. His every move was being watched. If Pinliang wanted to inform him, he had to use this roundabout method. "What are you doing here?" Li Zhengming was surprised that Pinliang would come knocking on his door. He didn't know that Pinliang was like him, a spy planted by Lin Yi. "No way. Broly is a smart man. Can't you guess why I'm here?" Pinliang smiled. "There's no point in talking. Please go back." Li Zhengming's face darkened. He didn't mind going back to being a spy, but only if Lin Yi said so. Otherwise, he didn't want to have anything to do with these people. Instead of wasting time with them, he'd rather use it to train. "Don't worry, Li Bro. You know about the fight between Lin Yi and Su Zhaohe, right? If you think that your boss can win this time, I'll give you a secret so you can give up." Zhong Pingliang said mysteriously. "What is it?" Li Zhengming glanced at him. "Su Zhaohe isn't a complete foundation establishment like you think he is. He's a real early-phase golden core master. Isn't this news shocking?" Pinliang smiled mysteriously. He didn't wait for Li Zhengming's reply and left. Early-phase golden core master. Li Zhengming's heart skipped a beat. His admiration for Lin Yi was no less than anyone else's, but Lin Yi was still a newbie. Even facing Su Zhaohe, who was at the peak of foundation establishment, was already very difficult. If the opponent was really at the early stage of golden core, how could he fight? But this Zhong Pingliang had never interacted with him before. Was he really just trying to convince him to surrender with this explosive piece of insider news? This kind of news should be top secret. It didn't make sense for him to know so easily. Was this person that simple? Although he was confused, Li Zhengming went to find Lin Yi and told him the news. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4168. If what Zhong Pingliang said is true, boss, you really have to think about it carefully this time. A man knows when to yield and when not to. Boss, you're still a newcomer anyway. Li Zhengming said hesitantly, implying that Lin Yi should take the initiative to admit defeat. In his opinion, Lin Yi had no chance of winning against Su Zhaohe, who was in the early phase of the golden core stage. It would be too stupid to fight to the end knowing that he was going to die. Hee, it's okay. I already know this. Lin Yi smiled faintly. This was not a boast, but a fact. The strength that Su Zhaohe had shown on the surface was only at the level of foundation completion, and Lin Yi had been tricked at first glance. But even if Su Zhaohe could fool everyone's eyes, he wouldn't be able to fool his golden finger. After coming to Heavenly Island, although there was no way to directly see the strength of a higher level, he could easily see through opponents of the same level or lower level. There was no possibility of getting away with it. You know that the opponent is in the early phase of the golden core stage. Boss, you still? Li Zhengming was stunned. He could see that Lin Yi wasn't trying to look impressive, but seemed to have the confidence to deal with it calmly. But a newcomer of the Welcome Pavilion against a master in the early phase of the golden core stage, and the opponent was a famous genius. Was this possible? You'll know when the time comes. Lin Yi smiled and patted Li Zhengming's shoulder. Then he was slightly stunned as he noticed a slim figure coming from not far away, and it looked very familiar. Are you Lin Yi? The person was wearing a veil, and the voice was very familiar. It was Huang Xiaotao, who went to Mount Tianwu with him. Captain Xiaotao? Lin Yi was stunned. He never thought that Huang Xiaotao would come to find him. But thinking about it, his identity as Wu Fu Ling was already known, so it wasn't strange for Huang Xiaotao to know about it. Senior, you really are Senior Ling Yi. That's great. Huang Xiaotao was instantly overjoyed, and she hurriedly walked quickly to stand before Lin Yi, unable to conceal her happiness. From the side, Li Zhengming looked at the two of them with a strange expression. Judging from Huang Xiaotao's current attire, she should be an official disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion without a doubt. On the other hand, although his boss Lin Yi was powerful, he was only a newcomer. Yet, he was being addressed as senior. No matter how he looked at it, this scene was strange. Boss, I'll go back first. Li Zhengming had a strange expression on his face. Immediately, he tactfully left. Don't call me senior. It sounds awkward. Just call me Lin Yi. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. This. Okay, then forgive me for being so bold, Lin. Lin Yi. Huang Xiaotao was also stunned, and then she said with some embarrassment. Previously, in her impression, Ling Yi was an extremely tyrannical existence that she could only look up to. She did not expect him to be a newcomer in the welcoming pavilion and even a junior brother of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. When she first heard the news, she didn't believe it. Now that she saw it with her own eyes, she finally accepted the reality. You came this time. What's the matter? Linny asked. It's actually nothing much. I just want to thank Senior. Oh no, Linny, for saving my life. I also want to apologize to you, Huang Xiaotao said softly with her head lowered. Sorry? Where did this come from? Linny couldn't help but ask curiously. If you hadn't stood up for us back then, we wouldn't have been able to escape. You wouldn't have provoked Su Zhaohe, and you wouldn't have fallen into this situation. It's all because of me, Huang Xiaotao said sadly. Back then, Ling Yi had indeed displayed great strength. However, in Huang Xiaotao's heart, Su Zhaohe had always been a shadow that she couldn't get rid of. She couldn't help but worry that Lin Yi might not be Su Zhaohe's opponent. If that happened, it would be equivalent to her harming Lin Yi, and she would feel guilty for the rest of her life. Actually, you're thinking too much. Even if this didn't happen, I still wanted to kill Su Zhaohe. However, Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, Captain Xiaotao, when I heard about your experience, I already wanted to kill this person. How can a scum like him live in this world? I was just worried that I wouldn't have a chance to kill him. I didn't expect him to take the initiative to challenge me. Isn't this perfect? Hearing this, Huang Xiaotao was a little surprised. She wanted to say something, but then hesitated. You actually want to take revenge for me? As Huang Xiaotao said this, she lowered her head. Her fingers were clenched together, and she didn't know what to do. After being injured, her usually cautious and fragile heart actually trembled at this moment, as if it had been touched by something. Thinking back, when they were at Hucai Tianwu Mountain, Lin Yi killed Su Zhaohe and the others in order to protect them. After that, in order to protect them, he fought with a mysterious expert. From the aura she felt from afar, that person should be an expert of the Golden Core stage. And now, he actually wanted to take the initiative to stand up for her and take revenge on Su Zhaohe. For no reason, they didn't have any contact. So why was he so good to her? Could it be that he likes me? This thought suddenly appeared, and it couldn't be stopped. In an instant, it occupied her entire mind, and it gave Huang Xiaotao a shock. She had always been very simple. Before she was injured, she had always been cultivating. After that, she was even more focused on accumulating spiritual jades to restore her appearance. She had never seriously thought about the matters of men and women, and she had always felt that love was very far away from her. Especially after she was disfigured, she felt that she could only live alone from now on. But she didn't expect that she would suddenly get to know Lin Yi. Although they had only met once before and didn't have much interaction, it was undeniable that Lin Yi had left a very unique first impression in her heart, and it made her curious. When a woman started to have curiosity about a man, then she wouldn't be far from falling for him. Huang Xiaotao couldn't help but let her imagination run wild. This feeling of being protected and protected by a man was really good and warm. Did he really like me? Did I like him too? What's wrong with you? Lin Yi saw that Huang Xiaotao lowered her head and didn't speak for a long time, and he couldn't help but ask curiously, It's nothing. Huang Xiaotao's heart skipped a beat, as if someone had seen through her little thoughts. Fortunately, she was wearing a veil. Otherwise, Lin Yi would have seen her blushing awkwardness and embarrassment. Oh, that's good. Lin Yi looked at her strangely and shrugged. But I'm already disfigured. You don't have to be so good to me. I'm not worth it. Huang Xiaotao suddenly thought of her current situation, and her expression became downcast. Her voice trembled as she said sadly, Floating astronomy. Chapter 4169. What? Lin Yi was stunned for a moment. It took him a while to react. Huang Xiaotao might have thought wrongly. A woman's mind was really hard to guess. Linny wanted to explain immediately. However, even through the veil, he could feel Huang Xiaotao's shyness, inferiority, and happiness at the same time. He couldn't help but hesitate. No matter how beautiful Huang Xiaotao was in the past, after she was disfigured, perhaps no man would have any thoughts about her. Since he suddenly treated her so well, it wasn't strange for her to misunderstand that he was interested in her. However, if he directly told the truth, would it hurt her heart? Although he didn't have much contact with Huang Xiaodao, and he didn't have any thoughts about her at the moment, for this pitiful but strong and kind girl, any man would probably feel pity and never have the heart to hurt her. Even if he was misunderstood, Lin Yi still couldn't bear to break Huang Xiaodao's beautiful thoughts at the moment. If he said it out, she might pretend not to care, but she would definitely be sad and embarrassed in her heart. She had already been disfigured by that scumbag Su Zhaohe. Lin Yi didn't want her to feel inferior again. Huang Xiaodao might not care about this, but if she was hurt because of him, or even opened up the scar, what difference was there between him and that scumbag Su Zhaohe? Actually, Lin Yi thought about it and said in a very tactful way, I still have a few close female confidants. Well, I heard. You have a good relationship with Laner? Huang Xiaotao still lowered her head and said in a low voice, so? I can't compare with her. When I see her, I feel inferior. Lin Yi was stunned again. He didn't expect Huang Xiaodao to pay so much attention to him. She should have known that he was Wu-Fu-ling not long ago, but she already knew this. However, listening to Huang Xiaotao's tone, she didn't seem to care about whether he had a close female confidant or not. However, Heaven Stage Island had always maintained its ancient customs. Polygamy and the like had always been very common. As a native, it seemed quite normal that Huang Xiaotao didn't resist it. What made Lin Yi helpless was that the other party's answer was obviously irrelevant. She didn't seem to understand the main point of this matter at all. Instead, she changed the topic to Shangguan Laner. Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh again. A woman's mind was really hard to guess. Forget it. Let me see your face, Lin Yi said. Although he didn't know whether to laugh or cry, he could still see that Huang Xiaodao's appearance was the biggest knot in her heart. If he didn't help her solve it, she would still feel inferior in the end. Especially when she saw a beauty like Shangguan Laner. It would touch her fragile nerves and remind her of herself, who was once equally beautiful. But if it recovers, then Huang Xiaodao would naturally regain her confidence. At that time, she would once again be the center of attention and wouldn't care whether Lin Yi liked her or not. Don't look. Huang Xiaodao was shocked. She covered her veil and subconsciously took a step back. She didn't have the domineering and resolute attitude of the trial team leader when she was at Mount Tianwu. Instead, she became more and more bashful. Don't be afraid. I'll just look. Lin Yi comforted her. No, don't. Huang Xiaodao shook her head repeatedly. She didn't want anyone to see her ugly appearance, let alone a man like Lin Yi who left a good impression on her. She didn't want her image to appear in Lin Yi's heart. Even the slightest flaw was something all women had in common. However, Lin Yi didn't give her a chance to refuse. He took a step forward while she was unprepared and pulled off her veil. Then, he saw the horrifying scar that covered almost half of her face like a centipede and smiled. Seeing Lin Yi smile, Huang Xiaodao was instantly filled with sorrow. Her eyes turned red, and she started crying. You really laughed at me. I knew it. After you saw my appearance, you wouldn't like me anymore. I really thought too highly of myself. Huang Xiaodao sobbed sorrowfully. Hearing this, Lin Yi was even more stunned and smiled bitterly. He thought to himself that Huang Xiaodao was really too fragile and sensitive when it came to this matter. No matter what happened, she would unconsciously think in the direction of inferiority. This had already become a knot in her heart. You're really thinking too much. I won't laugh at you. I definitely won't. Lin Yi promised with a straight face. He then paused and said, Wait for me for a moment. Really? Huang Xiaodao blinked her tear-stained eyes. She covered her face tightly with her hands, not letting Lin Yi see it. It was a pity that the centipede-like scar was useless no matter how hard she tried to cover it. Lin Yi nodded affirmatively. He rummaged through the space in the jade pendant and finally found a bottle of special edition injury medicine. This was a premium edition injury medicine that House Yu had gotten from the Common Worlds auction. Wu Qintian had packed it all up and stuffed it into Lin Yi's sky-class island. He thought that he wouldn't need it anymore, but he didn't think that it would actually come in handy. This medicine had miraculous effects on old wounds. Most importantly, it could remove scars. Of course, with Lin Yi's strength, he could actually recover Huang Xiaodao's appearance with the art of dragon mastery alone, even without this medicine. However, that would require her to be disfigured again in order to recover. That was because this was an old injury that she had suffered many years ago, and it had long since recovered. It was just an ugly and horrifying scar that was left behind. If she directly healed it like this, it would be impossible to heal the injury. If she were to forcefully disfigure her face again in order to recover her appearance, it would be very painful. Huang Xiaodao might not mind doing it herself, but since there was a better way, Lin Yi naturally didn't want her to suffer this pain. It's fine. It'll be fine soon, Lin Yi said as he personally applied the medicine on Huang Xiaodao's face. The feeling of skin-to-skin contact made Huang Xiaodao shocked, and embarrassed. She immediately froze and didn't dare to move. Feeling Lin Yi's warm breath so close to her and looking at Lin Yi's focused expression, Huang Xiaodao knew that he didn't have any other intentions, but her heart still couldn't help but beat wildly. Her mind went wild again, and she couldn't help but fantasize how great it would be if time could stop at this moment. Chapter 4170. Looking at the hideous centipede scar gradually disappear under the effect of the top-grade injury medicine. In the end, not even a wrinkle was left. Lin Yi smiled with satisfaction and handed a mirror to Huang Xiaotao. Huang Xiaotao took the mirror from Lin Yi in a daze and finally woke up from her wild imagination. When she thought of the possible situation, her hands couldn't help but tremble. She held the mirror for a long time, not daring to look at her own face. Don't be afraid. Take a good look at yourself now. Lin Yi smiled and encouraged her. Okay. Huang Xiaodao nodded and took a deep breath. Finally, she mustered the courage to look at herself in the mirror. Then, in an instant, she was stunned in disbelief. Her skin was as white as jade, and her skin was as soft and smooth as a newborn baby's. Her face was pure and flawless. After being tormented for so many years, Huang Xiaodao finally saw her past self again. This was a scene that had only appeared in her dreams. Was this another dream? Huang Xiaodao subconsciously pinched her arm and felt a real pain. Her heart was suddenly filled with ecstasy. It was actually real. Smack! Huang Xiaodao suddenly hugged Lin Yi excitedly. She tiptoed and kissed him on the cheek. Unable to suppress her excitement, she said incoherently, "Did you fall in love with me because you knew that you could restore my appearance? You're really amazing." Huh. Lin Yi was speechless. His original intention was that after Huang Xiaodao restored her appearance, she would naturally regain her confidence and would not be constrained to be with him. In terms of beauty, after Huang Xiaodao restored her appearance, she was not inferior to Shanghai Laner at all. In the past, even a person like Su Zhaohe was fascinated by her and did not hesitate to use despicable means. Now, she would definitely be able to attract countless young talents to submit to her. Unexpectedly, after Huang Xiaodao was pleasantly surprised. Her first reaction really made Lin Yi dumbfounded for a long time. He was at a loss for what to do. "Xiaodao, I'm only treating you as a good friend. I really don't mean anything else." Lin Yi had no choice but to bite the bullet and tell her the truth. In any case, now that she had regained her looks and confidence, she would definitely be the center of attention when she returned. Lin Yi reckoned that even if he were to tell her directly, she probably wouldn't be too upset. Upon hearing this, Huang Xiaodao was taken aback. A pair of pure and beautiful eyes stared at Lin Yi's face in astonishment. Her lips moved, but no words came out. "Xiaotao, I know you're a good girl, but I already have a lot of girlfriends." Since he'd already said it, Lin Yi decided to just say it all at once. He didn't want to leave any misunderstandings. It's not just what you've seen and heard. I have girlfriends in Zhongdao, and not just one. So, since there are already so many, is there still a need for me? Huang Xiaotao suddenly interrupted. Not only did her gaze not shrink back in the slightest, it became even more resolute. Linny almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He suddenly didn't know what to say. How did this girl's brain work? What kind of thinking and theory was this? Oh, I know. Huang Xiaotao suddenly patted her head. She suddenly realized and said, "You're afraid of being found out by them, so you don't dare to accept me, right?" That's right. Shangguan Laner is such a high and mighty little princess. How could she accept a low-level Blue Cloud Pavilion disciple like me? You're right. Linny was completely defeated by this girl's logic. He could only take advantage of the situation and lie. Anyway, no matter what, as long as he could make her retreat in the face of difficulties, it didn't matter what reason she used. What was important was the result. Then I know. Thank you. Huang Xiaotao seemed to have finally figured something out. She smiled sweetly at Lin Yi. After putting on her veil again, she didn't say anything else and directly ran away. Phew, she finally gave up. Linny looked at her back and couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He stretched out his hand to wipe the cold sweat on his forehead. Talking to this girl was more tiring than fighting with someone. To be honest, with Huang Xiaodao's pure and beautiful appearance, coupled with her strong and kind character, any man would be happy to see her. Naturally, Linny was no exception. After all, a fair and graceful lady was a gentleman's desire. This was the nature and common problem of men. The reason why Linny was trying to find ways to reject her was that he really didn't want to bear more love debts. Having so many confidants was indeed a blessing that all men would be extremely envious of, but at the same time, it was also a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. From the beginning to the end, Linny felt that he had too many confidants. Therefore, ever since he came to Heaven Stage Island, he deliberately avoided getting involved in love debts. He wholeheartedly cultivated and advanced, hoping to be able to wake up the women as soon as possible. If there was another Huang Xiaodao now, it would be unfair to both the many confidants and Huang Xiaodao herself, so it was better to give up the idea as soon as possible. It's probably because she's grateful that she's impulsive and wants to repay him. As long as she calms down and thinks about it, I believe she'll think it through. Linny shook his head with a smile and muttered to himself. Little did he know that this kind of impulsiveness was indeed very likely to happen to other girls. But with Huang Xiaodao's always firm heart, how could she be so easily impulsive? 5 days passed in a flash. The day of the arranged battle between Su Zhaohe and Lin Yi finally arrived as scheduled under the watchful eyes of the public. On this day, the North Island arena was crowded, and the surrounding stands were packed, attracting more than 60% of the disciples of the 3 pavilions to watch the battle. There was no need to talk about Su Zhaohe, as it was said that he was about to become Shangguan Tianhua's disciple, and he was one of the brightest geniuses in the 3 great pavilions. As for Lin Yi, although he was just a new disciple in the welcoming pavilion, he was the most famous new disciple in recent years, and his name had long since spread throughout the 3 great pavilions. Both sides were in the limelight. Coupled with the clear gap in strength between them, this battle had already attracted much attention from the moment it was set, and became the latest topic of conversation among almost all the disciples of the 3 pavilions. In the short span of 5 days, the public had interpreted the grudge between the two into several different versions. Some people said that Lin Yi killed Su Zhaohe, and so Su Zhaohe wanted to avenge his cousin, and at the same time show off his strength to attract the attention of the Shangguan cabinet. This was what Su Zhaohe said when he challenged Lin Yi in public. There were also some who said that Huang Xiaodao had gone to the welcoming pavilion to meet with Su Zhaohe in private. This woman had been involved in a scandal with Su Zhaohe in the past, and due to her disfigurement in an accident, she was exiled to Clear Cloud Pavilion. It was because of her provocation that Su Zhaohe and Lin Yi became enemies. To be continued. Chapter 4171. Some people even said that Su Zhaohe not only wanted to be apprenticed to Shangguan Tianhua, but also wanted to be Shanghai Tianhua's grandson-in-law. Rumor had it that Lin Yi was very close to Shanghai Laner, so he naturally became a thorn in Su Zhaohe's side. Su Zhaohe wanted to get rid of Lin Yi as soon as possible, so he made a challenge. Various versions of the rumors were flying around, and each of them was very convincing. This battle, which was already the focus of attention, became even more eye-catching, and even evolved into a fiery scene that was now full of people. But no matter which version they believed, the public opinion was always one-sided. In the face of Su Zhaohe, Lin Yi had no chance of winning. Accompanied by senior brother Ku Bai and several others, Lin Yi slowly stepped onto the North Island's arena. He looked around with a calm expression, and when he noticed the figure in the center of the stand, his eyes suddenly froze. Lin Yi never thought that his childish challenge could attract the top big shot of Shanghai Tianhua to watch the battle in person. It wasn't just him. Everyone else present had looks of shock on their faces when they saw Shangguan Tianhua arrive. They all thought that this top powerhouse had come for Su Zhaohe and wanted to use this challenge to see if Su Zhaohe had the potential to become his proud disciple. Most people thought so, and Su Zhaohe, as one of the protagonists of this challenge, was even more convinced and overjoyed. It was impossible for a big shot like Shanghai Tianhua to specially come to watch the battle for a small newcomer like Lin Yi. The only reasonable explanation was that he really paid attention to him and wanted to see if he could catch his eye. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. During this time, the rumor that Su Zhaohe was going to apprentice to Shanghai Tianhua became more and more intense. Everyone had already believed it to be true, and some people were really uncertain. Instead, it was Su Zhaohe himself. The reason was very simple. Shanghai Tianhua had never explicitly said that he would accept him as a disciple, but intentionally or unintentionally praised him at a meeting of the elders, saying that he could be trained. Gradually, the rumor that Shanghai Tianhua was ready to accept him as a disciple gradually spread, and it was spread to everyone. In addition, Shanghai Tianhua himself did not deny it, so the rumor gradually became more serious. Su Zhaohe was still a little nervous, but now seeing Shanghai Tianhua specially attend the challenge for him, he felt as if a big stone had fallen to the ground. It was as if a huge rock had been lifted off the ground, and his heart was completely at ease. He thought to himself that as long as he trampled Lin Yi to death today and revealed all of his hidden strength, the matter of him becoming Lin Yi's disciple would be a done deal. Little did he know that Shanghai Tianhua's appearance this time was completely the masterpiece of Su Zhaohe. He had to come, and his beard was almost pulled off by his little granddaughter. The reason why he was forcibly pulled here. In fact, Shanghai Laner only had one idea, and that was to let him save Lin Yi. Not to say to directly stop the challenge, but at least when Lin Yi encountered a fatal danger. With the strength of Shanghai Tianhua, he could always easily stop it and would not let Lin Yi die on the spot. However, after glancing at the person standing beside Shanghai Tianhua and Shanghai Laner, Lin Yi could not help but be stunned. He suddenly saw Huang Xiaodao. Since the last time she went back, Huang Xiaodao did not take off her veil, and the news that she had restored her appearance did not spread. Everything was still as usual, and Lin Yi was not too surprised about it. What really surprised him was when Huang Xiaodao and Shanghai Laner got together. Looking at the way Shanghai Laner talked and laughed with her, the two seemed to have a good relationship. Had they been friends for a long time? Why had he never heard Shanghai Laner mention it? However, Lin Yi changed his mind. Huang Xiaodao was also a disciple of Chongtian Pavilion at the beginning, and there were only a few female disciples in Chongtian Pavilion. It seemed quite normal for Shanghai Laner to know her and become her best friend. Little did he know that although Huang Xiaodao was a disciple of Chongtian Pavilion at the beginning, she did not stay in Chongtian Pavilion for a long time. Moreover, there was a huge gap between her and Shanghai Laner. It was destined that they would not even have a chance to meet each other. How could they become best friends? Under normal circumstances, people of similar social status would have a common language. Those who could become Shanghai Laner's best friend were princesses like Ning Xuefei. Huang Xiaodao, a grassroots disciple, obviously did not meet this condition. She and Shanghai Laner really got to know each other in the past few days, And the common ground between the two, or the source of their relationship becoming close, was because of Lin Yi. Senior sister Xiaodao, is what you told me before true? Little junior brother, can he really compete with a gold core stage master? Shanghai Laner looked at Lin Yi, who was walking on the ring, and asked worriedly again. This little girl really cared about Lin Yi very much. Huang Xiaodao sighed in her heart when she heard this. A few days ago, she saw Shanghai Laner having a headache because of this matter. She thought that the other party was Lin Yi's girlfriend, so she went up to comfort her and told her about this matter. In the beginning, Huang Xiaotao did not expect that this high and mighty Miss Shangguan would be so naive and unpretentious. After a while, the two actually became friends. Today, she was even dragged here by Shanghai Laner to cheer for Lin Yi. Of course, even if there was no Shanghai Laner, Huang Xiaotao would definitely come, but she would not stand in such a central place. However, Huang Xiaotao was still very happy to be able to become good friends with Shanghai Laner. It was not because of Shanghai Laner's noble status. She was not the kind of girl who loved vanity, but because the other party was Lin Yi's girlfriend. After getting along well with her, at least she could reduce some obstacles when she was with Lin Yi in the future. Well, of course, it's all true. Although we escaped in advance that day, we could still feel the aura from the fight behind us. The other party was definitely a gold core stage master. Lin Yi is still intact, which is enough to prove that he at least has the ability to compete with an early stage gold core stage master. So, Laner, you don't have to worry. Huang Xiaotao said with certainty. These words were not only to comfort Shanghai Laner, but also to comfort herself. After all, this matter was also her own speculation, and she was not 100% sure. Previously, when the gold core stage master tipped off Su Zhaohe, he did not mention his own strength at all. Anyway, he was a casual cultivator, and no one would pay attention to him. The reason why he did not mention it was because this matter was too shameful. He was a middle-stage gold core stage master, but he was seriously injured by a kid at the peak of the late-stage foundation establishment realm. If this was spread, he would be laughed at. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.